In the expansive virtual universe of Brave New World, BNW, where the boundaries of reality blend seamlessly with cutting-edge virtual reality technology, our protagonist discovered much more than a mere game. It was a lifeline. Brave New World wasn't just celebrated for its massive world spanning approximately 30 million square kilometers or its 2 billion NPCs. It was a realm where sensory experiences and graphics were indistinguishable from the real world. Yet, for our protagonist, the appeal of this vast virtual landscape was not just the adventure or the escape it offered. It was the potential for real-world profit. After a year of immersing himself in Brave New World, he had risen to become an elemental mage and the revered master of the Beamer Guild, commanding 200 members. The wealth he had accumulated from his virtual endeavors filled his treasury with gold coins, enough to ensure a comfortable, hassle-free existence outside the game. "With that much gold, you're sitting on a fortune," exclaimed a guild member, marveling at the treasure amassed, presumably from a secret dungeon. "It's all about knowing where to look," he responded with a knowing smile. Despite his modest educational and familial background, BNW was his equalizer. Here, within these digital expanses, he wasn't shackled by the conventional rules of the real world. Here, he could sculpt his own fate. However, tranquility in his virtual paradise was not to last. On a stormy day within a dense forest of Brave New World, he found himself the prey in a relentless chase by two well-armed enforcers from the Genesis Guild, a colossus in the world of Brave New World, notorious for its far-reaching influence and aggressive tactics. As rain veiled his movements, he ducked behind a tree, narrowly avoiding his pursuer's gaze. "Those dog-like Genesis bastards," he muttered under his breath, adrenaline coursing through his veins. The Genesis Guild had ruthlessly dismantled his Beamer Guild, a devastating blow that not only cost him his virtual empire but also plunged him into severe debt in the real world. As he crouched, hiding and catching his breath, a system notification blinked into view, reminding him of his prolonged session. "You have been playing for 47 hours. The message warned of the health risks associated with excessive gaming, but he dismissed the caution with a scoff. The idea of logging out held little appeal. Beyond the confines of Brave New World lay his dismal basement room and an aging VR capsule, far less enticing than confronting his adversaries within the game. Burdened with debt and betrayal, and with his powerful artifacts stolen by treacherous former allies. With just 3 pieces of dry beef jerky, a ragged cloak, 2 halves of treasure maps, and a faded wand as his remaining possessions, he slumped to the ground, utterly defeated. He exhaled a heavy sigh, his mind racing with doubts. Biting his lip in frustration, he wondered why, despite all his efforts and sacrifices, he always seemed to end up losing. As he wallowed in his despair, an old man suddenly appeared before him. The old man bluntly told him that his failures were due to his weakness, explaining that the world naturally favors the strong and that the weak are destined to be crushed. "Why do you cry foul over injustice?" the old man questioned, making him realize he hadn't noticed when the elder had arrived. The old man then scorned him for looking pale and pitiful, like a beggar seeking sympathy. Angered by the accusation, he snapped back, asking the old man to keep moving and leave him be, as he was in no mood for banter. Taken aback by his response, the old man chided him for not listening to an elder's advice. Just then, an assailant launched an unexpected attack from above. He quickly warned the old man of the danger, just as a loud explosion echoed through the forest. The attacker rebuked his own tardy comrade for not joining him sooner in the assault, mocking him as a slowpoke. Amidst the chaos, the attacker noted our protagonist's refusal to log out of Brave New World, even while injured. "You said it yourself, reality is more like hell," the attacker observed, his comrade in disbelief over such dedication to the game. Grimacing in pain and clutching his hand, he realized his dire situation, weaponless and vulnerable. He urged the old man to hurry away from the danger zone, growing frustrated when the old man seemed confused about being addressed. "Of course, I'm talking to you. This is no time for jokes," he exclaimed. Curious, the attacker's comrade inquired if the old man was just an NPC, to which the attacker laughed, amused by the concern shown for a virtual character. Suddenly, another figure approached, startling him. It was Kim Jin-woo, the comrade who had betrayed him. Jinwoo casually brushed off the label of traitor, claiming he had simply moved on to a better opportunity. He confronted Jinwoo, his voice heavy with betrayal. How could you turn on me when I thought of you as family? But Jinwoo just scoffed, dismissing the sentiment as outdated. If you really saw us as family, you wouldn't have dared to challenge Genesis, he retorted, accusing him of using guild members as mere pawns to keep his grip on the guild's reins. Before he could muster a response, Jinwoo cut him off, derisively dismissing the notion of family loyalty in guilds. Drop the family act. Haven't you heard? Businesses that play up the family angle only do so when they're thriving, he said, rummaging through his inventory. He revealed that it was he who had stolen the weapon, waving the staff with a taunt. To you, this was just trash, but watch me make it sing. With that, Jinwoo launched an attack, the power of the staff erupting in a fierce explosion. This weapon is incredible, he yelled triumphantly. Reeling from the attack, he shouted back, calling Jinwoo a lunatic for dismissing their shared past so casually. Jinwoo's reply was cold and calculated. I have to crush you completely, so you can't come back. Just then, a voice rang out, scolding Jinwoo as worthless scum. The old man, having intercepted Jinwoo's attack, shook his head in disgust. You might be trash, but even trash doesn't stab its benefactor in the back and then gloat, he chided. Jinwoo, flustered and stuttering, could hardly believe the old man had blocked his attack. Was that supposed to be an attack? The old man quipped, then demonstrated his own strength with a casual punch into the air, which shattered the ground and sent debris flying. Shielding his face from the flying dirt, he peered out to see the damage indicator on his interface spiked to 999 billion, the maximum possible in Brave New World. In shock, he stared as his rune of insight revealed the old man's status. An entity type NPC, human race, at the staggering level of 9999. Is your level really 9999? He gasped in disbelief. The old man, looking back at him with a knowing glance, said, I've been watching you struggle. You lack talent, money, and even luck, but your perseverance is commendable. Suddenly, the game's interface flickered beside him, displaying a new epic quest titled Sacred Bond of Connection. The quest required him to bow respectfully to the old man. Though the reward was unspecified, a stern warning cautioned that any disrespect might provoke the old man's wrath, potentially fatal. Realizing the gravity and the potential of this encounter, he noted the simplicity of the task yet pondered the ominous warning. With a mixture of awe and apprehension, he recognized this might be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to alter his fate within Brave New World. He bowed deeply in front of the old man, expressing his gratitude for saving his life. With a hopeful tone, he asked if the old man would take him on as a disciple. The system promptly confirmed that he had completed the epic quest, the Sacred Bond of Connection, and congratulated him on becoming a disciple of Deos, changing his class from elemental mage to disciple. Confused, he queried what being a disciple entailed. Deos responded simply, It means exactly that, you are my disciple now. Deos then offered his hand, promising to guide him toward becoming invincible. With a mix of anxiety and awe, he accepted Deos's hand. Suddenly, a circle of glowing magic appeared beneath their feet, teleportation magic. Within seconds, they were transported to the slopes of Kunlun Mountain. He found himself kneeling on the cold ground, dazed by the swift and effortless magic, wondering if Deos was really just an NPC or something more, like an administrator. Come, follow me, Deos instructed, not waiting for him to gather his thoughts. We're close to where your training will begin. Stumbling over his words, he managed a timid, yes. Moments later, he was astonished by the sight of a pristine, clear lake nestled among the mountains. Deos explained this was the lake of purification, meant to cleanse him. What do you mean by purify? He asked, seeking clarity. Deos approached, saying, I won't be teaching you for long. You'll undergo intensive training for 99 days, and this lake will aid in that process. It's quite literal. You need to be purified, like new wine in a new bottle. Without warning, Deos playfully kicked him into the lake, chuckling, "You're incredibly filthy. Wash up first." He plunged into the lake, instinctively covering his mouth, convinced he was drowning, only to realize he could still breathe underwater. The system then alerted him that the purification process had begun and that he should brace for severe pain lasting 1 minute. As he processed this, a bolt of lightning struck him, eliciting a scream of agony. Deos merely laughed, commenting on how his screams were refreshing. Pain seared through every cell of his body, pushing him to the brink. He staggered toward the system's logout sign, desperate for an escape. But then, memories flashed through his mind. His guild's destruction, the relentless chases, his tumultuous childhood, and he stopped. Clenching his teeth, he resolved not to run away. "I won't flee anymore," he declared. As the timer neared its end, bubbles began to surface from the lake. When the minute finally passed, he crawled out, gasping and trembling, yet triumphant. "I did it," he murmured, collapsing onto the ground with a smile, embracing the pain as a sign of his forthcoming transformation. As he lay exhausted by the lake, a notification from the system flashed before him, declaring his purification complete and initiating a reset of his character. The screen updated to show his profile. Han Tisung, level now reset from 201 to a mere 1. His class labeled as Disciple and his entity type as Adventurer. Shock washed over him as he pointed trembling fingers at his now minimal level. Deos, unfazed, tossed him a towel, remarking, "An hour ago, you were essentially useless." Han questioned if Deos was referring to his previous state, and Deos confirmed, explaining that his strength, stamina, mana, and overall growth had been poorly balanced. "Did you really think you could become invincible with such skewed development?" Deos challenged, making Han wonder if his entire level had been reset because he was deemed a useless character. Deos assured him that this was a complete rebuild, aimed to draw out his full potential. "While others might gain 1 mana, you will now gain 1.2, Deos explained, sparking surprise and curiosity in Han about this new growth rate. Gratefully, Han bowed deeply to Deos, expressing his appreciation and commitment as a disciple. Deus, slightly amused by the frequency of his bowing that day, warned, "It's too early to celebrate. You have a long journey ahead to become the strongest." He added that the intensive training process would repeat 100 times over the next 99 days. Determined, Han interrupted, "I can handle it, whether it's 100 times or 1,000. I won't give up on getting stronger." Deus looked at him, a hint of surprise in his gaze, hopeful that Han's resolve would endure. Meanwhile, the system indicated that Han's real training, termed Rebirth, had just begun, currently at 1%. Across the globe in the United States, at the headquarters of Brave New World's game company Hive, in a division known as Hexagon, a buzz of activity erupted. "Epic Code 007 activated," an employee exclaimed, drawing a crowd around his workstation. They questioned whether Deos had indeed taken a new disciple and if it was the same professional gamer as before. "No, it seems to be just an ordinary gamer," the employee responded. Just then, Oppenheimer, the vice chairman and head of Hexagon, strode in, demanding a closer look at the screen. After zooming in and reviewing Han's profile, Oppenheimer confirmed, "This is an ordinary heavy user from Korea." The room filled with murmurs and astonishment, pondering what made an ordinary gamer the choice for such a unique and formidable training program under Deos. As Oppenheimer scrutinized Han T-Sung's data on the screen, he mused aloud that they should observe how long T-Sung would last under such intense conditions. Han T-Sung, once seeking an escape from his harsh reality through Brave New World, had realized that the virtual world mirrored the struggles of real life. This realization made him question whether the problem was with the game or himself. But after encountering his master, Deus, he found a glimmer of hope and embarked on rigorous training to achieve invincibility. 3 months swiftly passed, and amidst the heavy mountain snow, Deus savored a warm cup, telling Han that he was pleased to see his student offering him a drink. With a smile, Han thanked his master. Deus then casually mentioned that the 99 days of promised training were coming to an end, asking Han if he felt sad about leaving the harsh conditions of Cumberland Mountain. Han replied, "How could I be sad? It's been nothing short of hellish here." Deos laughed, teasing him for being soft after only 3 months, reminiscing about his own days of relentless training without sleep. During their break, Han remembered how he had worked diligently to clear his debts. Curious, Han asked Deos if he had ever endured similar hardships. Deos shared a piece of his past, revealing that 500 years ago, he was the weakest among the 8 strongest people on the continent. Despite his efforts, he remained in last place, pushing him to seclude himself on Kunlun Mountain for intense training. He achieved immense power, yet he still couldn't surpass his peers. Stunned, Han asked if his opponents were truly that formidable. Deos replied that when he finally descended from the mountain, 500 years had passed, and all his rivals had aged significantly. He hadn't noticed the time slipping by due to his singular focus on training. Deos then pulled an old book from beneath his coat and tossed it at Han's feet, challenging him to understand what being invincible truly meant. Han guessed that it meant being stronger than anyone else, but Deos corrected him, explaining that invincibility meant having the power to overcome any enemy, not necessarily being the strongest. Being the strongest isn't the goal. Weakening an enemy stronger than you is, Deos revealed, introducing the concept of becoming a debuff master. When Han opened the book, a surge of powerful energy burst forth, and the system notified him that he had successfully completed the quest of Rebirth, enduring 100% of Deos's training. With his class now changed from disciple to debuff master, and his nickname unexpectedly altered to Siegfried, he found himself bewildered. "Why Siegfried?" he asked. Deos, with a playful smirk, replied, "As my only disciple, you need a name that fits your new stature. Siegfried suits you well, so from now on, that's who you'll be." He was stunned. In Brave New World, players typically couldn't alter their nicknames, yet here was Deos, tweaking the system's rules with ease. Despite the sudden changes, he felt a deep sense of renewal. Armed with his newfound powers, he believed he could even challenge the formidable foes from Genesis. Eager to know his next steps, he asked Deos what he should do now. Deos explained that the legendary figures from 5 centuries ago likely had successors, and it was his task to confront these descendants using the skills he had honed. The system promptly unveiled an epic quest to defeat the 7 descendants of the 8 mighty warriors of old, excluding Deos, of course. The targets were listed: the descendant of Vajra, the thunder god; the descendant of the sword saint Murcielago; a descendant of the great sage Ziggurat; the descendant of the blood demon Berserk; the descendant of Pope Magrus; the descendant of the Grand Place Windforce, and the descendant of King Braum. Fired up by the challenge, he assured Deos, "No matter what, I will defeat them and prove my strength." Deos observed him with a nod, noting, "Your eyes, they show a new resolve." With a snap of his fingers, Deos summoned a teleportation circle beneath him. "Your training is complete. Go forth and become the strongest successor," Deos instructed. Confident and ready, he affirmed his readiness, and the teleportation magic whisked him away to his new beginning. Now alone, Deos pondered in his quiet home, wondering if perhaps he had placed too much burden on his disciple. Meanwhile, Siegfried found himself in the Beerman territory on the western edge of the continent. As he walked through the forest, he considered the distance Deos had sent him and concluded it was for the best. Being only level 1, an encounter with Genesis members now would mean certain defeat. His immediate goal was clear: to grow stronger quietly until he reached at least level 100. He reviewed his job description. The Debuff Master was a unique role, capable of melee damage, support, and large area attacks. It specialized in weakening opponents with various debuffs, wielding heavy weapons and protected by heavy armor. The system outlined his equipment mastery: blunt weapons, shields, greatswords, spears, gauntlets, and heavy armor, all at level 1. His skills included the Weakening Curse, Desperate Defense, and Smash, all starting at level 1 with several more abilities locked, ready to be unlocked as he progressed. As he explored his new abilities, he was particularly curious about how his Desperate Defense and Weakening Curse could enhance the effects of his area debuffs. The system detailed that Desperate Defense would create a protective field around him, lowering the defense and magic resistance of nearby enemies. As he leveled up, the reach of this field would expand. Weakening Curse was equally formidable, designed to gradually sap the health and mana of his foes. Amazed by the potency of these skills, which could reduce both defense and magic resistance while also inflicting fixed damage based on mana, he was eager to test them out. Just as he pondered whether to find some monsters or perhaps cheekily target a passing NPC, he heard a high-pitched scream for help. Turning around, he saw a tiger sprinting towards him, a frantic hamster clenched in its jaws. The hamster, surprisingly articulate, pleaded, "Save me, you human jerk." At that moment, an emergency hidden quest popped up on his screen. Rescue the Great Spirit. His task was to defeat the mutated level 25 tiger and save the Great Spirit, though the reward remained a mystery. He wondered if the chatty hamster was the so-called Great Spirit. Considering the tiger's high level for what seemed like a beginner area, he was momentarily unsure of how to proceed. Spotting a sturdy branch on the ground, he picked it up as an improvised weapon. Activating his desperate defense and weakening curse, he watched the tiger's defenses and vitality visibly diminish. He then took his chance, striking the tiger with the branch, forcing it to drop the hamster. Recalling Deos's teachings, that the strength of an enemy didn't matter if you could just weaken them, he prepared for the tiger's counterattack. As the tiger lunged with deadly claws, he dodged nimbly, using the agility he had honed under Deos's rigorous training. He struck repeatedly with the branch, each hit draining the tiger's strength further. The hamster, now on the sidelines, alternated between cheering and scolding, which was as distracting as it was amusing. Focusing back on the tiger, he realized the gravity of the situation. Despite the debuffs, the level disparity was still daunting, and his health and mana were critically low. His makeshift weapon was also nearing its breakpoint. Determined to end the battle quickly, he gathered his remaining strength for a final, decisive blow. As the tiger pounced again, he sidestepped its claws and swung his branch with all his might, channeling his smash skill. The branch connected with the tiger's head with a resounding crack, causing a shockwave of force. The mighty tiger crumpled to the ground, defeated. The system chimed in triumphantly, notifying him that he had leveled up spectacularly, to level 15. He examined a small scratch on his arm, amazed that he had surged to level 15 from a single encounter. As he gazed at the fallen tiger, he affirmed to himself that overcoming such challenges was exactly what being a debuff master was all about. The hamster, eager to leave the scene, called out impatiently for him to hurry up and move on. Once freed, the hamster sighed with relief, thanking him in a surprisingly eloquent tone and mentioning its narrow escape from death. The hamster expressed a desire to repay his kindness and hinted at feeling lonely on such adventures. Before it could ask to join him, he quickly stated that he was accustomed to solitude and began to walk away, leaving the hamster astonished. However, it wasn't ready to give up. It clung to his leg, tears streaming down its face, revealing that it had lost its powers due to amnesia and pleaded to be taken along. He looked down at the clingy hamster and dryly remarked that he wasn't in the habit of keeping pets. Just then, the system chimed in, announcing the completion of a hidden quest. The reward? A contract with the Great Forest Spirit. Realizing the hamster was indeed this spirit, he thought about how useful such a being could be once it regained its strength, despite its current diminutive form. Agreeing to form a contract, he acknowledged the hamster's resilience and unexpectedly endearing nature, which made the hamster blush and timidly ask if he truly meant his words. As they formalized their contract, the system confirmed the successful binding with the Great Forest Spirit, revealing its full name as Prometheus Cactus Hydra Leviathan Bless Zacharias Anabolic Gallardo. It was a divine beast of level 15, the same as him, classified as a trickster with titles like Forest Tyrant and Forest Renegade. The exact skills it possessed remained undisclosed. Realizing that their levels would sync as contract partners, he mulled over the implications of the title, Forest Renegade. The hamster then suggested they properly introduce themselves. It began to recite its elaborate name, but he cut it short, deeming it too cumbersome. A system prompt then allowed him to rename the Great Forest Spirit. With a slight grin, he dubbed it Hamji, a simple twist on hamster, which left Hamji both stunned and momentarily speechless. Moments later, Hamji's astonishment turned to indignation. It protested. "How can you name a great spirit Hamji?" He lightly chuckled, assuring Hamji that it was indeed a cute name, fitting for its new start with him. Despite Hamji's protests that such a name was ridiculous for a great spirit, he reminded it that the name was now official and encouraged Hamji to embrace it. As they walked together, he curiously asked Hamji why such a powerful being had been confined to a cage. Hamji sighed, admitting he awoke already trapped and could only remember his name and that he was once a revered spirit of a forest, with no recollection of how he ended up caged. It was a mystery that left him quite frustrated. Sensing Hamji's distress, he reassured him, suggesting that they focus on strengthening themselves first, before delving into the mysteries of his past. Hamji reluctantly agreed, but couldn't hide his hope that his new master would eventually help him recover his lost memories. Soon, they arrived at a sturdy-looking guild house. As they entered, a character known as Jericho, who managed the mercenary guild's front desk, greeted them warmly. Jericho, a programmed NPC, inquired about his visit. He stated his intention to acquire a mercenary license, understanding that it was essential for advancing further in his quest for strength. Jericho explained that obtaining the license required passing a qualification test, and questioned if it was really necessary to test his abilities, given his recent claims of immortality. Jericho then suggested a task to capture mutant rabbits known to roam the vacant territories nearby. Instead of accepting the task, he placed an item on the table, a claw from the mutant tiger he had just defeated, and asked if that could serve as proof of his capabilities. Jericho examined the claw, visibly shocked by the strength and durability it represented, a material often used in crafting lower-grade weapons. Proudly, he explained that he had encountered and defeated the mutant tiger en route to the village, proposing that this feat was far more impressive than capturing mere rabbits. Jericho, still taken aback by the bold claim, quickly agreed, recognizing that such a feat indeed surpassed the initial test requirements. He then discreetly tucked the tiger claw under his jacket, confirming that the evidence was more than sufficient and that he would proceed with issuing the mercenary license. After a few moments, Jericho handed over the mercenary guild license, which he accepted with gratitude. As they wrapped up, Jericho, seeming to hold a deeper concern, asked if he had a moment to listen to a troubling matter. Jericho shared that there had been an unusual surge in mutant activity recently, including an attack on a nearby ranch that had left the local villagers in a state of fear. Curious, he inquired if these monster appearances had become more frequent specifically in the village. Jericho confirmed this, adding that the mutant tiger he had captured was an anomaly in the Beerman territories, indicating a shift in the regional ecosystem, or perhaps something more sinister influencing the area. As they discussed the disturbing rise in mutant activity, he noted Jericho's particular concern over not just mutant tigers, but also the increased sightings of mutant wolves and buffaloes. The presence of such formidable creatures in typically low-level areas was alarming, clearly indicating a deeper, more sinister issue at play. Jericho shared his hope that he could lend his strength to the cause, and soon after, the system pinged with a new quest: Guardian of the Beerman territory. The mission tasked him with aiding the beleaguered territory until the situation stabilized, promising a reward of 100 gold. He hesitated, pointing out that his level might be too low to tackle such a dangerous task effectively. Jericho, however, countered with a poignant reminder: he was the only one in the village who had managed to take down a mutant tiger alone, especially under the recent dire circumstances following the mutant attack on a nearby ranch. Furthermore, their remote location on the border lacked any magical communication circles, isolating them from swift outside help, which would take at least a week to arrive. The gravity of their situation weighed on him. Normally, he would shy away from such a daunting task, but the desperate circumstances and the urgent need for a guardian compelled him to accept the quest. Jericho's relief was palpable as he eagerly anticipated his assistance. Meanwhile, in a stark contrast to the hopeful atmosphere at the guild, the scene shifted to the grim realities of Schreier Castle, where death and despair reigned. A man, bloodied and crawling, pleaded for mercy, only to meet a brutal end as an axe decapitated him. The assailant, declaring his superiority and intentions to rule, dismissed the dying man's pleas as foolishness, illustrating the harsh rule that awaited under his dominion. Back in the village, T-Sung stepped out of the weapon shop, newly equipped but still looking somewhat disheveled, which prompted Hamji to tease him about his appearance, likening him to a decent beggar now, rather than just a beggar. Annoyed, T-Sung questioned what Hamji meant by that. Perched on his shoulder, Hamji cheekily remarked that it was time to upgrade from his worn training clothes. As T-Sung handled his new weapon, pondering its adequacy, Hamji hinted it was time to eat, playfully accusing him of being a freeloader. Hamji, not one to be overlooked, expressed his disdain for the low-quality meals he had been provided, igniting a brief spat over the cost and quality of the monostones T-Sung had purchased for him. Their banter was interrupted by a stranger approaching, inquiring if he was the adventurer who had captured the mutant tiger. The man introduced himself as Jang Manbok, soon to be his companion on the quest, along with others named Thompson and Rousey. As he shook hands with Manbok, he recalled Jericho's words that he wouldn't be alone in this quest, reassured by the presence of other mercenaries. Introducing himself as Siegfried. As Manbok addressed him as captain, he was taken aback, prompting him to question the sudden title. Manbok explained with a straightforward logic that the strongest should naturally assume the role of the leader, and given his recent triumph over the mutant tiger while they were still grappling with basic challenges, the title was well deserved. He accepted the role with a mixture of surprise and responsibility, acknowledging Manbok's frankness. Thompson then pointed out that their team was now officially formed and asked about their next steps. He suggested that their first task should be to secure Buckarty Ranch within the Beerman territory, especially since he had heard that the situation there was particularly dire. At Buckarty Ranch, the scene was chaotic with the local army struggling against waves of mutant animals. Amidst the melee, Manbok was seen fending off a mutant wolf while Thompson assisted by thrusting his spear at the beast. Manbok, feeling the strain of the battle, half-jokingly wished for his younger days when such feats were less taxing. As they conversed about the ongoing fight, a level 25 mutated bison suddenly charged into the fray, launching them into the air with its tremendous force. Engaged in his own battle, he nearly missed the approaching danger until a stuttered shout alerted him to the bison's charge. Reacting swiftly, he activated his smash skill and charged head-on, striking the massive creature with a precise blow to its head, instantly bringing it down. The system updated his progress. He had advanced to level 20. Breathing heavily from the exertion, he felt the pressure of many eyes on him, which made him consider the relative peace of hunting alone compared to the chaos of group combat. As Rousey approached, carrying an injured Manbok, she checked on his well-being. He assured her he was fine but was concerned about the others, especially after noticing they had been in the path of the rampaging bison. Manbok, claiming his role as a tank allowed him to withstand the hit, reassured him that Thompson would survive, though he would need time to recover. Amidst these reassurances, Manbok praised his solo takedown of the bison, confirming that the tales of his prowess were not exaggerated. He even half-jokingly asked if he had considered turning professional, to which he responded with a modest chuckle, attributing his success to luck. The sudden retreat of the mutated animals interrupted their conversation. As they watched the creatures disappear into the forest in a coordinated withdrawal, Manbok wondered aloud if their mission was now complete. However, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was something orchestrated about the retreat, as if the mutants had received a command. As he surveyed the aftermath of the battle, the system sprang to life, presenting him with a new quest titled Investigation. This mission tasked him with uncovering the reasons behind the mutant creatures' coordinated attacks and offered a reward of 200 gold. This wasn't just about repelling the mutants. It was about understanding their motives. He informed the group that he needed to return to the main tent to gather more information on the mutants' movements and then track where they were headed. Manbok expressed concern about him venturing out alone, but he reassured the group that he was in good condition to handle it. Just then, Hamji piped up, asserting his presence as a reassurance for the team, eliciting an amused blush from Rousey at his endearing confidence. Venturing into the forest, he followed the clear trail of footprints left by the mutants, confirming his suspicion that they were all moving in the same direction, toward the Schreier territory. This shift in their behavior piqued his curiosity. Perhaps the mutants had a new target. As he pondered the implications, Hamji called out to him from a tree, playfully accusing him of dallying. Pointing ahead, Hamji directed his attention to the castle gates of Schreier territory, which swung open at that moment. To his astonishment, a creature mounted on the back of the mutated tiger emerged to join the horde of mutants. The system identified this figure as Garugo, a legendary golden goblin known as the Goblin Lord, reputed to appear only once every century. Garugo was a formidable boss with light and fire attributes and a rare ability to control the minds of monsters. Realizing Garugo was the puppet master behind the mutant uprising, he understood the gravity of the threat. Hamji, now perched on his shoulder, asked anxiously what their next move would be. He decided that they needed to regroup at the barracks. Confronting Garugo directly in his current state was too risky. Back at the Beerman territory barracks, he was greeted by a bald man introducing himself as Blick, the commander-in-chief of the Beerman army. As they shook hands, Blick acknowledged having heard of his exploits from Jericho, who had highly recommended him. Despite the urgency that filled the air, Blick wished for a longer chat but insisted they focus on the pressing matters at hand. He explained his findings to Blick, revealing that the Schreier territory had indeed fallen to the goblins, and it was the Goblin Lord's mind control abilities that had orchestrated the mutant crisis. Now, it seemed, Garugo aimed to extend his dominion to the Beerman territory. The gravity of their situation was clear as he explained to Blick that if his observations were correct, the Beerman territory was on the brink of disaster due to the Goblin Lord's formidable powers. He suggested that their best course of action might be to evacuate the Lord and the residents immediately to avoid catastrophic losses. Manbuck, puzzled, raised his hand and questioned why they were only now becoming aware of the neighboring Schreier territory's plight. Blick responded with a tone of regret, explaining that their interactions with Schreier had been minimal and their small territory lacked a robust communication network. This isolation, he realized, was precisely what the Goblin Lord had exploited, targeting their vulnerabilities to orchestrate the crisis. Blick, shaken, lamented the potential fall of their proud Beerman heritage, which had stood strong for 300 years, now threatened by the looming goblin invasion. He wondered aloud, with a tremble in his voice, how they could possibly explain this dire situation to their lord. Reassuring Blick, he proposed a potential, though uncertain, strategy that might give them a fighting chance. Surprised and desperate for any solution, Blick stuttered, asking what this method entailed. He explained that they needed time. Not for preparation or reinforcements, but for him to grow stronger. His plan was straightforward. To utilize special forces for guerrilla warfare. Disrupting the mutants' ranks and then drawing them to his location where he could engage them directly. Once he reached level 30, he promised to join the frontline efforts against the goblins himself. Blick reminded him of the rune of Transcendence's power, which allowed those from another world like him to grow at an accelerated pace. However, he cautioned that even with rapid growth, facing a level 50 Goblin Lord at level 30 would be a daunting challenge. Acknowledging the gap, he argued that his previous success against a level 25 mutant tiger while only at level 1 demonstrated that the improbable could indeed be possible. Even if he failed, he reasoned, the attempt could buy crucial time for reinforcements to arrive. After a moment of contemplation, Blick sighed, a mixture of resignation and resolve settling over him. He agreed to trust in the plan, expressing a cautious optimism. Just then, the system chimed in, displaying a new general quest titled, Kill the Goblin Lord. The mission was clear, to defeat Garugo, and yet, the reward remained unspecified, adding an air of mystery to the already daunting task. As he was absorbed in reviewing the quest details, Hamji tugged at his attention, seemingly annoyed. Apologizing, he assumed Hamji was hinting at needing more funds for food, which only irritated Hamji further. Exasperated, Hamji accused him of misunderstanding, emphasizing that his concern wasn't about sustenance, but about something else entirely. Aren't you curious why that bald man seemed to be holding back something important? Hamji pressed, suggesting that there might be more to the situation than Blick was letting on. He responded to Hamji's probing with a question of his own, asking how the spirit had sensed the commander's reticence. Hamji, with a hint of pride, explained that reaching the rank of Great Spirit had sharpened his perceptual abilities, reminding him not to underestimate his capabilities. He then shared with Hamji his plan to unlock powerful new skills once he reached level 30, which would be crucial for confronting Garugo. However, he confessed that he couldn't guarantee victory, and he was cautious about revealing these abilities prematurely, especially around other players who might not understand or misuse the information. Hamji, reflecting on the complexities of human endeavors, commented on how exhausting their lives seemed. He replied that enduring a tiring life was preferable to being vulnerable and unprepared. Just then, Manbuck joined the conversation, inquiring if he had finished his discussion with the commander. He acknowledged that he had but expressed reservations about the strategy's heavy reliance on him. Manbuck, with a chuckle, reassured him and expressed appreciation for his leadership and the plan. As Manbuck and Ruze prepared to log out and rest before the operation, Hamji curiously asked if he intended to return to the other world. He explained that he'd take a short break as well and tossed a mana stone to Hamji, instructing him to treat himself to a snack. Catching the stone, Hamji teased him about his unexpected generosity, thanking him warmly. Yet Hamji couldn't help but recall an earlier conversation where he had mentioned a lack of funds. He chuckled and admitted to a small deception, stating he had some reserves and then logged out. Back in the real world, he removed his helmet and stepped away from the VR machine, feeling the stiffness in his muscles as reality set in. He contemplated grabbing a bite to eat but decided against it due to time constraints, opting instead for a quick rest. Lying down, he reflected on the whirlwind of events that had transformed his in-game life. From a fugitive to a debuff master now deeply embroiled in a fight for territorial control. This introspection led him to realize how much his motivations had shifted. Initially driven by revenge and the lure of monetary gain, he now found genuine enjoyment in the game's challenges and complexities. This revelation made him question his maturity, wondering if his growing passion for the game was a sign of his evolving priorities. Lost in thoughts about diving back into the game to grow stronger and revel in his newfound freedom, he was suddenly pulled back to reality by a knock at his door. Surprised, as he wasn't expecting anyone, he cautiously opened the door a crack and peered out, asking who was there. Han Tisung was puzzled as the installation crew confirmed his identity and insisted on setting up a new capsule he hadn't ordered. He was handed a document that hinted at something called Epic Code 007, which seemed to connect to his hidden class within Brave New World. As he scanned the document, he realized this might be a significant upgrade from the developers themselves, potentially a reward or recognition for his achievements in the game. Managing to keep his composure, he invited the installation crew into his modest room, engaging them with small talk and asking about their preferred beverages, all while trying to process the unexpected gift. As the men set up the new capsule, a mysterious suited individual lurked nearby, quietly reporting the progress to someone he referred to as the chairman. This hidden observer was the director, who questioned the chairman's motives for such generosity towards Tisung, given they shared no personal connection. The chairman's response revealed a sense of kinship among those with hidden classes, suggesting that this was more than just a random act of kindness, it was an acknowledgement of their shared secret journey within the game. Once the installation was complete, Han couldn't hide his astonishment as he examined the HyperVR Capsule Ogre, a top-tier system endorsed by none other than Ki Hyung-seok, the infamous guild master of Genesis. The realization that such an elite device was now his to command was overwhelming. It wasn't just any capsule. It was a symbol of status and power, one that regular players could only dream of possessing. Eager to test his new gaming rig, he dismissed any thoughts of sleep, declaring that there was no time for rest when there was so much to experience. As he settled into the capsule, he immediately noticed the enhanced features, from the superior cushioning that enveloped him to the heightened sensory feedback that promised an even more immersive experience. But the initial excitement soon turned to confusion. As the VR environment activated, he was greeted not by the familiar login screens or tranquil settings, but by the harsh and disorienting sensation of heat and the smell of smoke. Opening his eyes within the game, he was shocked to find himself in the midst of a village engulfed in flames. Around him, the chaos of battle raged as mutated animals launched a ferocious assault on the Beerman army. Frozen in disbelief, Han was jolted by the desperate cries of Hamji, the Great Spirit, pleading for rescue amidst the havoc. The reality of the game had never felt so intense or so immediate. As the cries echoed in his ears, he realized that this new capsule had thrust him into the heart of the conflict in a way he had never experienced before. Blurring the lines between game and reality, demanding action not just as a player, but as a hero called to save his newfound ally and perhaps, the entire territory. As he leaped into the fray, he saw Hamji, the Great Spirit, desperately trying to outrun a mutated wolf. Hamji's cries pierced the chaos, questioning if this was where his storied life would meet its end. With timing that couldn't have been more critical, he intervened just as the wolf was about to strike, landing a powerful blow to the creature's head with his weapon. Hamji, visibly shaken, turned to him in surprise and relief but quickly shifted to anger. Climbing onto his face, Hamji demanded to know why he had taken so long to appear, accusing him of nearly letting him perish. Gently removing Hamji from his face, he urged him to calm down and quickly explain the situation. Hamji, still fuming, snapped back. "Can't you see what's happening?" He detailed that as soon as they had logged back into the game, they were ambushed by goblins coordinating with the mutants, catching everyone completely off guard. He cursed under his breath, infuriated that the enemy had launched their assault while they were logged out. He inquired if Hamji had seen any other adventurers since their abrupt return. Hamji confirmed that he appeared to be the only one, which explained the chaos and lack of resistance they were witnessing. Seeing an opportunity to refocus their efforts, he reassured Hamji that now they didn't need to worry about maintaining appearances and concocted a plan. However, the mention of a mission immediately made Hamji wary, sensing the danger it implied. Meanwhile, the scene around them grew grimmer as a goblin casually licked its sword, now stained with blood, while the surrounding wolves growled menacingly. The goblins continued their relentless march towards the Beerman army, who were desperately trying to protect the fleeing women and children. Looking over his shoulder at the beleaguered civilians, he realized the evacuation had been botched. Moving them now was not just difficult, but nearly impossible due to the sheer number of mutants overwhelming their defenses. Battle-weary and surrounded, he braced for what seemed like his final stand. Just as a goblin lunged towards him with lethal intent, a figure unexpectedly intervened, striking the goblin squarely in the face, saving him in the nick of time. Confused yet grateful, he grasped his weapon, activating his smash skill and charging back into the fray to face the goblin once more, landing another decisive blow. As he explained his awareness of the situation and his plan to handle it, he directed the stunned bystander to aid in the evacuation of the civilians. The bystander, clearly hesitant to leave such a daunting task to a lone mercenary, was soon convinced when he witnessed the dazzling display of his desperate defense and weakening curse skills. Gratefully accepting an item tossed to him by the bystander, which he was told might offer some small aid, he reassured everyone that he preferred to work solo on this. As the army facilitated the civilians' retreat, the bystander confessed feeling inadequate for just watching but acknowledged the necessity of entrusting him with the defense. As he faced down the mutants and goblins with increasing confidence, he found it somewhat liberating to demonstrate his skills in front of an NPC, albeit a tactic reminiscent of the ancient Joseon era, a time he had only read about in the game's lore. His focus was razor-sharp, allowing him to block a vicious bite from a mutant just in time. Another goblin lunged at him, but he swiftly pushed the mutant aside and parried the goblin's slash, noting how the weakening curse visibly pained and slowed their movements. He taunted the goblin, criticizing its sloppy attacks, and as he blocked another blow, he remarked mockingly that they should have fled when he had set the trap. With precise movement, he then seized the goblin's head, slamming it to the ground with such force that it underscored his dominance, proclaiming that escape was never an option for them. The superiority of his new Hyper-VR capsule ogre was evident. He could perceive each minute detail of the enemy's tactics, enhancing his ability to react. Trained by his master Deos, his skills were sharp, but the capsule's advanced technology made him feel nearly invincible, allowing him to dodge and counter with unprecedented ease. Each strike he delivered was a testament to the privileges that such high-end gear afforded, making him ponder the disparities between the elite players and the rest. As he vanquished another enemy, the system updated his status to level 22. Despite the satisfaction of overcoming numerous foes, he couldn't help but feel a tinge of frustration at the slow pace of his progress. Leveling up had become a tougher grind past level 20. Just then, Hamji burst onto the scene in a frantic dash, tears streaming down his face as he led a horde of mutants and goblins in his wake. Breathlessly, he called out to him, his fucking master, asking if this chaotic onslaught was sufficient. His smile broadened, realizing that no matter the difficulty in leveling up, the sheer number of enemies now presented a golden opportunity for rapid advancement. Elsewhere, Garugo, the Goblin Lord, observed the chaos with a cold detachment. Perched atop an old man writhing in pain, he mused through his lieutenant, Gwaine, that this outsider, Siegfried, was becoming a genuine threat. Garugo's disdain for the local resistance was palpable as he derided Blick, who was gravely injured yet defiant. Blick, summoning every ounce of his remaining strength, challenged Garugo directly, declaring his intent to reclaim his lord and territory. Garugo, with a cruel smirk, questioned Blick's right to call him a coward, considering his failure to protect his own leader. He then taunted Blick further by mockingly grabbing the lord by the head, speculating on how long Blick and his lord could last. Despite the dire circumstances, Blick's resolve did not waver. He silently implored Siegfried to hasten his efforts, knowing that the survival of their territory, and perhaps much more, depended on it. 30 minutes earlier, Hamji's voice trembled with urgency as he protested against his proposed role in the upcoming conflict. Asserting his dignity as a great spirit, he expressed his fears of being merely used as bait to lure the enemy. He questioned the wisdom of such a risky maneuver, hinting at the dangers of potentially being captured. In response, he posed a stark choice to Hamji, challenging him to consider the consequences of inaction. Would Hamji prefer his master to be seen as a cowardly adventurer who fled at the first sign of trouble, especially when their retreat could spell doom for everyone else? His words struck a chord, and though Hamji was reluctant, he ultimately acquiesced to the plan after securing a promise of abundant nuts as a reward for his cooperation. Now, back in the present, he found himself apologizing to a visibly upset Hamji, who was fed up with being dragged into chaotic situations. Hamji, his frustration evident, vowed never to fall for such tactics again. Acknowledging Hamji's distress, he tried to reassure his companion that the immediate danger had passed and encouraged him to relax. Yet Hamji wasn't easily placated, reminding him pointedly that their success in ambushing the enemy was largely due to his efforts. As they regrouped, he opened one of the bottles given to them by the army, inquiring about a specific item he had requested earlier. Hamji, misinterpreting his question for the Goblin Lord, reported that while he hadn't seen it personally, he had identified a likely stronghold. Motivated by this information, Hamji darted through the forest, maneuvering past mutants and goblins, until the ominous silhouette of Beerman Castle loomed ahead. A palpable sense of evil hung in the air, confirming his suspicions that the Goblin Lord might have taken over the stronghold. Normally, he knew that key figures like the Lord or General Blick would have already evacuated such a dangerous area. The unsettling silence and absence of leadership figures like Blick made him uneasy. Picking up his pace, he told Hamji they needed to move quickly, which only deepened Hamji's concern about the perils ahead. As he reaffirmed his intention to enter the castle alone, citing the dangers within, an unexpected movement among the bodies they had left behind caught Hamji's attention. This startling realization made Hamji hastily decide that he preferred to face whatever threats lay ahead together rather than stay behind alone. Minutes later, as they approached the menacing flame-engulfed castle, he hesitated at the threshold, sensing the thick, evil aura swirling inside. Turning to Hamji, who had ignored earlier instructions and followed him, he questioned his decision. Hamji confessed his fear and his deep concern for his master's safety, prompting him to admit, almost with a laugh, that Hamji's heartfelt worry was unexpectedly moving. Hamji's concern was palpable as he clung to his back, his voice urgent. "Do you even have a plan?" he queried, his tone a mix of fear and anticipation. When prompted to clarify, Hamji pointed out the grim reality. They were about to face the Goblin Lord, a foe whose notorious strength and cunning demanded a well-thought-out strategy, especially considering the possibility of their initial assault failing. Acknowledging Hamji's valid point, he admitted the lack of time to devise a detailed plan. With a resolute expression, he bent down and propelled them forward with explosive speed towards the castle, calling over his shoulder. Sometimes, you just have to push through and act. As they barged through the castle door, Hamji was jostled around, but they managed to land safely, albeit roughly, inside. Hamji, rubbing his back and still in disbelief, exclaimed about their reckless entrance. But before he could continue, he motioned for silence. His gaze shifted as he spotted Blick, the loyal knight, who wryly commented on their noisy arrival. He rushed over to Blick, noticing the knight's injured arm, and questioned why he hadn't evacuated with the others. Blick's response was filled with resolute dignity. Despite his injuries, he was committed to his knightly duty to protect his lord at all costs. Just then, Gorugo, the menacing Goblin Lord, addressed him directly. With a chilling calmness, he acknowledged his prowess in decimating his army and recognized him as a formidable human opponent. Gorugo then insinuated that he had strategically sacrificed the Beerman people to buy time for his own growth, a tactic that ultimately failed to save them. Blick, hearing this, urged him not to be swayed by Gorugo's psychological games. Inquiring about a figure lying prone behind Gorugo, he was distressed to learn it was indeed their lord. Blick implored him not to react to Gorugo's provocations, but driven by a need to act, he approached the Goblin Lord with his weapon concealed. Gorugo, misinterpreting his actions, mockingly asked if he was surrendering out of guilt. Seizing the moment, he activated his new skill, Speed Regulation, which drastically slowed Gorugo's movements and reactions. As Gorugo launched a predictable attack, he dodged effortlessly and circled to the Lord's side, grabbing him safely away from the goblin's grasp. Surprised by his agility, Gorugo lost track of his movements. Was that a trick? Gorugo growled, confusion mixing with anger. Facing the Goblin Lord once more, he sternly warned him not to lay a finger on Blick, his voice echoing with authority. Enraged, Gorugo lunged at him in fury, but he coolly countered with a swift kick that sent the Goblin Lord staggering back. Realizing the effectiveness of his skill, Gorugo felt an unfamiliar slow poison creeping through his veins, hindering his every move. Frustrated and bewildered, Gorugo demanded an explanation, sensing that his control over the situation was slipping away. He nodded towards Blick, who still seemed to reel from the shock of the recent chaos, and reassured him. Speed regulation really did the trick, didn't it? He then gently handed Blick his severed arm, a grim yet necessary gesture, remarking, "I can't reattach this, but it shouldn't stay in enemy hands." He expressed gratitude towards Blick and the others for their resilience, acknowledging that their courage had given him the crucial time needed to grow stronger. Turning his attention back to the immediate needs, he called out to Hamji, who had been cautiously observing from a distance. "Hamji, no more hiding. Help escort the Lord and Blick to safety." Hamji, momentarily surprised by the sudden request, quickly sprang into action, carefully dragging the Lord away from the danger zone. As Hamji and Blick maneuvered the Lord to safety, Blick thanked Hamji, who, despite the urgency, reminded Blick to keep the pace up without further complaints. Watching them disappear into a safer part of the castle, he sighed in relief, relieved that the immediate threat to their lives was diminished. Now, only Gorugo, the Goblin King, stood between him and victory. Gorugo, inflamed with rage, roared at him, vowing revenge for the humiliation and the strange magic that had thwarted his plans. "You've messed with the wrong Goblin King," Gorugo bellowed, swearing to dismantle him piece by piece. Unfazed, he shot back with a taunt. "Time to have some real fun, don't you think?" The Goblin King lunged forward, swinging his massive axe, which he dodged with ease before countering with several swift strikes. Despite the pain, Gorugo managed to land a heavy punch, throwing him back against the throne. As he collided with the hard surface, he realized Gorugo was beginning to adapt to the effects of the speed regulation skill. High-level bosses always find a way to be a nuisance, he mused, acknowledging the persistent resilience of formidable enemies. Gorugo advanced, mocking his earlier confidence and questioning if he truly believed those tricks would secure him a victory. Freeing himself slightly from the skill's constraints, Gorugo sneered, "You underestimated me. I won't just defeat you, I'll savor your destruction." Bruised but resolute, he acknowledged internally that speed regulation was indeed just a support skill and lamented the drain it had placed on his mana reserves. Should have used that other skill first, he thought regretfully. Despite this, he decided against deploying his reserve abilities just yet, opting instead to close the gap and engage Garugo directly, waiting for an opportune moment to strike. As they clashed once more, their weapons met with a force that jolted through his arm, causing him pain. Garugo laughed cruelly, taunting him to think faster. "Surely you've got something else up your sleeve, or is your brain as slow as your moves?" As Garugo loomed over him, the disparity between their strengths seemed to widen with each passing moment. Garugo's contemptuous words echoed through the shattered hall, his disdain for humanity apparent as he pinned him to the ground and declared his ambition to elevate the goblins beyond their historical subjugation by humans. Garugo's foot pressed down, and a harsh kick to the stomach underscored his resolve to change the goblins' legacy, to instill fear and reverence among all races. Despite the pain and the precarious situation, he found the strength to respond with a taunt, sarcastically praising Garugo's touching speech about goblin oppression. He then provoked Garugo further, suggesting that the disdain for goblins stemmed from their actions and appearance, hinting that any respect needed to be earned rather than demanded. Enraged, Garugo asked if these were his last words, lifting his axe to deliver a fatal blow. At this critical moment, he chose to deactivate his speed regulators. Garugo sensed the change but proceeded with his attack, which resulted in a massive explosion as his axe struck the ground. The force was so great that Garugo momentarily thought he had overextended his strength, only to realize his opponent had vanished from beneath him. Reappearing with strategic precision, he seized the moment, his movements now unencumbered by the previous slowing effect. He unleashed a flurry of attacks, each one striking Garugo with increased velocity. A precise hit knocked Garugo's crown to the ground, and just as he was about to land a decisive blow to Garugo's head, the unexpected sound of a whistle halted his actions. Turning sharply, he saw a mutated tiger charging towards them. The beast collided with him, sending him reeling back, but he quickly regained his footing. Garugo praised the tiger's intervention, remarking on the necessity of extreme measures to end the battle. Using his mind control abilities, Garugo commanded the tiger to finish the fight, showcasing the true might of a Goblin Lord. Pinned to the ground by the ferocious tiger, he listened as Garugo declared the castle would be his grave, a final insult from the Goblin Lord. But even in this dire position, he wasn't defeated. With a defiant glare, he tapped into a deep, seldom used power, activating his disdain for the strong skill. A potent ability that he had kept in reserve for such a critical moment. Looking directly at Garugo, he reminded the Goblin Lord of his earlier mockery, calling him a mercenary with no cause. "Remember calling me a nobody?" he challenged, his voice steady despite the pressure. "This nobody is about to turn the tables." The system's warning echoed in his mind as Garugo's level advantage loomed large, yet his newly activated skill, disdain for the strong, tilted the odds in his favor. This skill not only increased the damage he inflicted on higher-level foes, but also reduced the damage he received, an invaluable boon in this dire confrontation. As the tiger lunged, he stood his ground, slashing through Garugo with a decisive stroke, proclaiming his title not merely as a debuff master, but as a force to be reckoned with atop the world of Brave New World. With Garugo's defeat, the quest to protect the Beerman estate was marked as complete. The fall of the Goblin Lord lifted his mental dominion over the monsters, leading to a swift mop-up of the remaining threats. The survivors, though weary and battered, began the slow process of rebuilding, their spirits buoyed by the lifting of the dark cloud that had overshadowed their lands. He sat outside his tent, a potion in hand, reflecting on the day's harrowing events. The satisfying burp he let out after drinking echoed his relief and contentment, a stark contrast to the intensity of the battle. This potion, which had snatched him from the jaws of death, was a marvel he could never experience in his real life, adding a layer of surreal appreciation for his adventures in this virtual world. His victory over such a formidable opponent as Garugo filled him with a mix of pride and disbelief. He recognized how crucial the disdain for the strong skill had been. The ability to amplify damage against higher-level enemies and diminish incoming harm had proven its worth. affirming its legendary status among debuff skills. However, its long cooldown reminded him of the need for strategic use in future battles. As he contemplated his growing arsenal of abilities, Blick approached, inquiring about his well-being. Standing up, he greeted Blick with concern, suggesting the knight take more time to recover. Blick, however, expressed a restlessness from being confined and mentioned that their lord had summoned him to the castle. As they walked towards the castle, he inquired about the lord's condition, to which Blick reassured him that the lord was recovering well, thanks to timely medical attention. Blick's laughter lightened the mood as he commented on the lord's surprisingly robust nature, despite his deceptive appearance. This conversation brought a moment of levity, though Blick's bandaged arm was a stark reminder of the costs of their victory. Apologizing for his late arrival, which he felt contributed to Blick's injury, he expressed regret that he hadn't been able to prevent it. Blick's reassurance that the loss of an arm was a minor sacrifice compared to the protection of their territory resonated deeply, but he still felt the weight of Blick's sacrifice. As they approached the gathering where everyone awaited, the lord of the Beerman territory, Baron Wegman, stepped forward with unsteady steps, weakened, yet dignified. Baron Wegman introduced himself with a voice that carried the gravity of his office, yet there was a hint of awe as he acknowledged the man who had saved their lands. "You've brought us back from the brink," he said, his voice growing stronger with every word. The Baron then did something unexpected. He knelt before him, a gesture of deep gratitude that spoke volumes of the nobleman's character. Despite his protests, the Baron insisted on showing his respect, emphasizing the heroism that had preserved their way of life. The moment, however, took a lighter turn as Wegman, still frail from his injuries, attempted to rise and winced in pain. The old general's misfortune broke the solemn mood, prompting a brief exchange where Wegman, half in jest, claimed he was near death, a dramatic declaration that brought a reluctant smile to everyone's faces. Blick, bashful yet proud, watched on, unable to hide his admiration for both the Baron and the man who had saved their home. Recovering from the mishap, Wegman brushed off his discomfort and insisted on bestowing a proper thank you. He spoke of the importance of recognizing bravery and sacrifice, stating that no matter the capacity in which he had served, mercenary or not, his actions had been crucial. "It's not just about the role you played, it's about the lives you've saved," Wegman insisted, emphasizing the profound impact of his bravery. Led by Wegman, they moved towards the castle's treasure vault, an ancient room that once housed countless artifacts and riches, but now lay nearly empty. A testament to the territory's long and tumultuous history. Wegman, retrieving a lone chest from the remnants, presented it to him as the last true treasure of the Beerman estate. As he opened the chest, a radiant light spilled out, revealing its contents, a voucher for Mercedes' workshop. This piqued his interest greatly, as Mercedes' workshop was renowned across the continent of Nürburgring for its exquisite craftsmanship where magic, alchemy, and metallurgy converged. This workshop had pioneered many innovations, making it a legendary site where the most formidable artifacts were believed to be crafted. The revelation that such a significant reward had been bestowed upon him filled him with a sense of accomplishment and curiosity. The voucher was not just a ticket to obtain a rare item. It was an invitation to explore the rich history and advanced technological prowess of a world that blended the mystique of ancient crafts with the promise of new discoveries. The revelation of the artifact's origins and the prestigious lineage of the Mercedes workshop filled the room with a sense of historical significance. Wegman elaborated that the voucher he now held was not just a tool for enhancement but a relic of a pivotal moment in the continent's history. The workshops of Autonica, Mirian, and Mercedes, each renowned for distinct crafts, represented the pinnacle of magical and technological integration, known as the Three Great Houses. Among them, Mercedes stood as a beacon of ultimate craftsmanship, making the voucher an invaluable piece of this illustrious heritage. The voucher's ability to enhance any artifact 12 times with a guaranteed success was an extraordinary boon. Such a powerful enhancement tool could shift the balance of power in any conflict or adventure, making it a coveted item across all realms of Brave New World. As Wegman recounted the tale of the workshop's origins and his ancestors' gamble to support the then unknown Mercedes, the depth of the gift began to sink in. It was a testament to visionary support and belief in potential, much like what Wegman now saw in him. Wegman's candid admission about his family's legacy and the lack of a suitable heir to carry on that visionary spirit added a personal layer to the narrative. His description of his son as competent yet lacking the mark of a true leader painted a picture of a dynasty at a crossroads, seeking a new direction. The request that followed, Wegman's appeal for him to guide and perhaps mentor his son if he were to rise as a hero, was both an honor and a hefty responsibility. It reflected Wegman's deep trust and recognition of his capabilities beyond mere physical prowess in battle. The parallel drawn between his potential heroism and the historical support his ancestor provided to Mercedes emphasized the cyclical nature of support and success. Accepting the Mercedes voucher, he felt a newfound commitment not just to his own journey but to the future of the Beerman territory and its ruling family. This gesture wasn't just about accepting a reward. It was about stepping into a role that intertwined his destiny with the legacy and future of this land and its people. With a respectful nod, he affirmed his willingness to support Wegman's son, recognizing the trust and hope being placed in him. As he reviewed the new quest, a promise with Baron Wegman, he pondered the long-term implications it held. The mission required him to rise to the rank of master or higher, then use this status to foster a relationship with Baron Wegman's son in the capital. The quest rewards promised not only an increase in reputation but also other, unspecified benefits, hinting at significant opportunities if he managed to excel in his new role. This added a layer of responsibility to his journey in Brave New World, emphasizing the importance of his choices and growth. Holding the Mercedes voucher, he felt a mix of opportunity and burden. While the immediate financial gain of auctioning the voucher was tempting, the potential to enhance his capabilities and make a lasting impact in this world was far more valuable. Reflecting on what his mentor Deos would have said, he chided himself for even considering the short-term gain. With a decisive nod, he stashed the voucher in his inventory, choosing to invest in his future potential over immediate rewards. His thoughts were momentarily interrupted as he realized he hadn't seen Hamji all day. Concerned yet somewhat amused at what mischief the spirited Hamji might be getting into, he made his way towards the Adventurers Guild, hoping to find him there. At the guild, the scene he walked into was both hilarious and exasperating. Hamji was in the middle of a lively performance, shaking his butt to the amusement of the gathered crowd, including Manbuck, who was thoroughly entertained by the spectacle. Manbuck's laughter and the thrown snack were proof of Hamji's charm and his ability to engage an audience, however unorthodox his methods might be. Hamji, ever the performer, was already pitching his next act. A comedic impersonation of his master, unaware that the subject of his jest was standing right behind him. The moment he questioned Hamji's reference to a stupid master, the mood shifted from playful to tense. Picking up Hamji in a mix of mock anger and genuine irritation, he demanded an explanation for Hamji's antics. Hamji's retort that he had resorted to performing for snacks because of his lousy master only added fuel to their comedic yet strained interaction. Manbuck, catching sight of him, intervened to ease the tension, noting how he always seemed to be in the middle of some urgent task. He invited him to sit and relax, reminding him of the rewards yet to be claimed from his recent quests. He smiled as he prepared to collect his richly deserved rewards. Manbuck, brimming with joy, exclaimed he'd never gathered so many prizes in his entire life. He pondered how Thompson, who had fled in fear, would turn green with envy if he knew. Considering whether to share the news about the workshop voucher, he thought better of it, not wishing to dampen Manbuck's spirits. Just then, Jericho spotted him and called out. He expressed his relief at seeing Jericho safe, to which Jericho, eyes glistening with tears, gratefully acknowledged that his safety was all thanks to their heroics. However, Jericho lamented that the repairs had drained his pockets, and though they had to square away their business, the reward was a modest 5,000 gold, for which he apologized. Leaning in, Jericho quietly inquired whether he had secretly visited the castle to claim additional rewards from their lord, without the knowledge of the other mercenaries. He nodded, complimenting Jericho on his sharp intuition. As he laid down his gold, he seized the moment to ask Jericho about something that had puzzled him during his earlier visit to the castle. He hadn't seen the Goblin Lord's body and wondered about its whereabouts. Jericho explained that the remains were near Lake Beerman's shore. Their lord had made an example of the goblins who tried to flee, hanging them publicly. Jericho admitted that the gruesome scene had unsettled him too, leaving him feeling queasy. Contemplating his next moves, he mused over whether it was time to leave the Beerman estate. Though his stay was brief, the experiences had shaped him profoundly. He speculated whether his master Deos had foreseen this growth, prompting his assignment here. Choosing not to dwell on it, he felt a surge of gratitude towards Deos for the promising start. Suddenly, a commotion erupted at the Adventurers Guild entrance. A boisterous voice bellowed, causing passers-by to wince and clutch their ears in agony. Jericho stormed over, irate, demanding to know who would be so reckless to make such noise at that hour. He reassured Jericho, suspecting the man had already departed. But then, a hearty, carefree voice called out, addressing someone as disciple. His heart skipped. Could it be his master, Deos? They all hurried outside and were stunned by the sight of the newcomer. An imposing figure whose presence demanded to know if he was man or bear, never having encountered such a formidable aura. As he made his way past the crowd, the stranger turned and joyfully declared that they had finally met, addressing him warmly as his disciple. He was momentarily taken aback, asking the old man if he was indeed addressing him. The old man confirmed with a playful challenge, asking who else he could possibly mean. Hamji, bewildered, wondered aloud if this imposing figure was the master he had heard about, noting his intimidating presence. He agreed, finding something extraordinary about the old man that went beyond mere age. Curious, he activated his rune of insight and discovered that the old man was named Beetlejuice, a human NPC with an impressive level of 361, and held the esteemed title of Sword Emperor within the 5-star heaven. Beetlejuice, perceiving his scrutiny, introduced himself grandly as a grandmaster capable of splitting mountains and seas with his sword's might. His introduction was so powerful it sent a ripple of fear through the bystanders, compelling them to scatter. As the name and title sank in, he recalled tales of Beetlejuice and the prestigious 5-star heaven, a title reserved for the top 5 masters under the skies of the Nürburgring continent. Realizing the rarity of meeting such a legend in a remote area, he reminisced about his first encounter with his own master, Deos, in a secluded forest, pondering if such places were indeed the haunts of hidden geniuses. Beetlejuice, stepping closer, inquired if he was ready to accept him as his master. Taken aback, he clarified that there had been some misunderstanding. But Beetlejuice brushed it off, asserting that if he deemed him a disciple, it was so. His laughter filled the air as he remarked on his apparent naivety about the world and the grandeur of the 5-star heaven. He started to explain, but was quickly interrupted. He already knew about the continent's 5 stars and the mastery of the grandmasters. Beetlejuice, puzzled by his confident response, asked why he seemed so well informed yet reacted so strongly. He apologized, explaining that he was already committed to another master. Beetlejuice's surprise was evident, questioning what significance that held and suggesting he abandon his current allegiance for a stronger guide. This comment stirred his pride, and he sharply asked Beetlejuice to cease, asserting that his master was not only stronger but had also imparted to him secret techniques that were unrivaled. Intrigued, Beetlejuice inquired if his master was one of the Samjan, the 3 venerable beings known as Great Grandmasters. He responded no, hinting his master's status transcended even that lofty rank. Beetlejuice considered this, skeptical yet curious about someone surpassing the renowned Samjan, while he reiterated his trust in his master's invincibility. Beetlejuice paused, seemingly puzzled, before he let out a sigh. With a chuckle, he drew his sword, remarking on how his words were amusing yet bold. He struck the ground, causing it to crack and release a powerful aura. "You are invincible in your own right," Beetlejuice conceded. "And while you are arrogant, I see the deep respect you have for your master. I won't force you to become my disciple." Yet, his eyes twinkled with mischief as he couldn't let the challenge pass untested. With a swift motion, Beetlejuice thrust his sword into the earth near him, proposing a daring wager. "Let's see if your confidence is well placed, you arrogant hopeful," he teased. Suddenly, an urgent quest notification popped up before him. He was to win the bet against Beetlejuice of the 5-star heaven or risk becoming his disciple. Reflecting on his own journey, Beetlejuice recalled his younger days at 26, when he roamed the lands as a formidable swordsman, his blade slicing effortlessly through any obstacle. By the time he was 120, he had mastered his art, but a profound sense of emptiness overshadowed his triumph. One day, overhearing a master instruct his disciple under a bridge, Beetlejuice realized what he lacked: a successor to carry on his legacy. The thought that his perfected skills would vanish with him spurred him to search for a worthy disciple. His search, however, was fraught with disappointment. While some disciples excelled in mana usage, they lacked instinctive combat skills. Others simply couldn't surpass their physical limitations. The tragic death of a disciple in an accident had shaken him deeply, reminding him of the urgency to find a true successor before time ran out. Now at 130 years old, Beetlejuice was determined to find that successor in Beerman territory, the last place he had yet to search. The moment he laid eyes on him, he knew, despite the young man's cheeky attitude, that he had found his potential disciple. Frustrated by the unexpected turn of events, he protested, "What have you been rambling about? I have no intention of becoming your disciple." But Beetlejuice simply shrugged, suggesting that if he truly did not wish to be a disciple, he should prove it by winning the bet. It seemed that, in his old age, Beetlejuice was not just stubborn, but also crafty, believing that restraint was a sign of acceptance. Caught in a dilemma, he realized the gravity of the situation. Ignoring a figure like Beetlejuice wasn't an option. Now, he was entangled in a quest that might change his destiny. Faced with no other option, he cautiously inquired about the specifics of Beetlejuice's bet. With a mischievous twinkle in his eye, Beetlejuice explained that the challenge was simply to land a hit on him. Confused, he asked for clarification, to which Beetlejuice elaborated that he had just one opportunity to strike or use magic against him. If he managed to inflict even the slightest damage, he would win. Moreover, Beetlejuice assured him that he would not use mana and would rely solely on his physical training, boasting that his body had no weaknesses. Despite his reluctance, he realized he had little choice but to accept the challenge. He was taken aback when Beetlejuice hinted at accepting him as a disciple right then and there if he felt unsure about winning. He then questioned if Beetlejuice even knew his name, to which Beetlejuice dismissively responded that it didn't matter for now. He would learn it in due course. Feeling undervalued and seen merely as a vessel for passing on skills, he gripped his mace tightly. He declared that he was not interested in becoming the disciple of someone who saw him as just a means to an end. Activating his desperate defense, scorn of the strong, and smash skills simultaneously, he vowed he would rather perish than succumb to such a fate. Beetlejuice simply countered that overcoming such defiance was the essence of winning a bet. Unfazed, he assured Beetlejuice he had no plans to lose and charged forward. Beetlejuice observed his approach, noting the predictability and recklessness of his movements as he attempted to apply debuff skills to weaken a specific part of his body. Closing his palm, Beetlejuice thought he could easily counter the move by identifying the debuffed area. However, to his surprise, the debuff had been cleverly placed on his less guarded spot. In the heat of the moment, he struck Beetlejuice with full force, eliciting a loud scream of pain from the seasoned warrior, followed by a deafening explosion. As the dust settled, adventurers spilled out from the guild house, curious about the commotion and speculating about a possible bet. The scene was obscured by dust, making it hard for them to see clearly. Nambak turned to Jericho, remarking that it was the first time he had witnessed Tisung fight with such fervor, questioning if Tisung really was on par with them. Jericho, still reeling from the spectacle, acknowledged Tisung's prowess, reminding Nambak that Tisung hadn't single-handedly defeated the Goblin Lord by mere chance. As the dust began to clear, they saw Beetlejuice standing, only to collapse moments later. The group rushed to check on him, finding him unconscious, not dead. They realized that despite his mastery, Beetlejuice had perhaps not trained enough to endure such a powerful strike. He let out a sigh of relief, mixed with a twinge of sympathy for Beetlejuice. "Next time, don't be so careless," he advised the fallen swordsman, wondering if this meant his quest was officially complete. The system promptly confirmed that he had indeed won the bet against Beetlejuice of the 5 celestial stars, and prompted him to claim his reward. As he clicked yes, Hamji, still rubbing his head from the earlier commotion, asked what was happening. "Are you okay?" he asked, concerned for his friend. Hamji, still feeling the effects of the encounter, half-jokingly called him a terrible master for putting them through such an ordeal. He reassured Hamji that it was all over now, and suggested they leave before Beetlejuice regained consciousness and posed any further challenge. As they prepared to leave, he remembered their initial plan. "We were heading to the place where the Goblin Lord's body is, right?" Hamji confirmed, recalling that they intended to extract some blood from the body before it decayed, as it could be quite valuable. Hamji teased him for his thriftiness, to which he responded with a chuckle. "Call it frugality." And they made their way towards the Beerman entrance. Meanwhile, at the Sohoka ruins in the Macklin Kingdom, a place haunted by the memory of a level 500 monster known as the Python, which appeared 30 years ago, adventurers between levels 40 and 60 gathered, making it a popular spot. Near the ruins, in the Mercenary Guild, adventurers were busy forming parties. A woman was trying to organize a group but struggled to find a buffer, having to turn away a man who offered his skills as a damage dealer because those positions were already filled. The man left in a huff. Gosrin, a level 40 elemental mage, scanned the crowd. She noted many familiar faces, all seemingly stuck in the same predicament. No priests or buffers in sight. Her hopes for a successful hunt were dwindling until she spotted a fresh face that immediately lifted her spirits. Curious, she activated her rune of insight to learn more about him. To her surprise, his stats were impressive. Without hesitation, she grabbed his arm apologetically and asked, "Would you like to join our party?" Earlier that day, back in the real world, T-Sung had been at the bank. After handling his transactions, he stretched, feeling the fatigue of the day weigh on him. Since the adventure in Beerman territory, he had been caught up in sorting out his real-life responsibilities, mainly paying off the growing pile of debts. The numbers seemed higher than ever. His bank loan stood at a daunting 200 million won, and a private loan added another 100 million won. He couldn't help but notice that the loan sharks, usually a constant presence at his doorstep, had been unusually quiet. No news is good news, he thought, hoping they'd remain silent. As he walked down the bustling city street, a car horn drew his attention. Turning around, he saw a sleek luxury car. Inside, a man asked a well-dressed woman if she'd like omakase for dinner, a suggestion that clearly didn't concern budgets. He wondered how much it would cost to own such a car. Although the Goblin Lord quest had been lucrative, he knew such windfalls were rare for low-level players like himself. The world of B&W, much like reality, was starkly divided between the haves and the have-nots. But he remained hopeful. After level 200, more profitable quests and rare items became accessible. Zeal merchants and other game dynamics offered support to lower-level players, who could ascend to pro-gamer status or become popular streamers if they had the right skills. Someday, he mused, he'd be the one in a luxury car, with a beautiful wife and a penthouse to call home. Back in the game, he was momentarily dazzled by Gosrin's striking appearance. Hamji had to snap him out of it, teasing him about daydreaming. Embarrassed, he refocused and learned that Gosrin's party needed a buffer or a priest. Realizing she had pegged him for a support class due to his debuff skills, he initially hesitated, preferring to venture alone. But Hamji quickly intervened, enthusiastically telling Gosrin they would join her party. Confused and a bit flustered, he whispered to Hamji, questioning the sudden decision. Hamji, ever the pragmatist, chided him for being out of touch, suggesting that sometimes you need to team up to advance. "What do you mean by that?" he asked, still unsure. Hamji only half-joked that his solitary ways would leave him lonely, implying he looked as if he was already envisioning a future with grandchildren. Despite his reservations, he knew deep down that hiding his capabilities wasn't the way forward. As Hamji continued to urge him, he conceded, realizing that perhaps it was time to embrace the opportunities that teamwork could bring in both his virtual and real lives. As he considered his role in the team, he wondered if his job was simply to cast debuffs from the background. Gosrin leaned in close, her eyes shimmering like polished crystals, and confirmed just that. "Our damage dealers are set," she assured him. "You just need to focus on your debuffs." Then, with a gentle smile, she asked again if he would join them. Captivated by her charm, he agreed, promising to do his best under her guidance. Soon after, he followed the group to the western outskirts of the Sohoka ruins. He knew the tragic history of this place. Once a bustling metropolis, it was devastated 30 years ago by a rampaging lightning python. Although the beast was defeated, its essence had seeped into the land, giving rise to light attribute monsters that now roam the ruins. As they approached their destination, one of Gosrin's teammates, noticing his low level of 31, expressed concerns about his ability to contribute. Gosrin reassured him, "We'll handle the front lines. As long as he supports us with debuffs from the back, we'll be fine. I'll make sure to keep an eye out for any trouble." The man seemed skeptical, having never relied on a debuffer before. "I've teamed up with buffers and healers, but never a debuffer. Are you sure this is a good idea?" he questioned, half in doubt, half in curiosity. Gosrin apologized for the unconventional setup but stressed the difficulty of finding suitable buffers or priests. "We're all in this together now, so let's give it our best shot," she encouraged, just as she noticed a sudden movement. Reacting swiftly, Gosrin pushed her teammate aside, dodging an attack from one of the light attribute monsters spawned from the remnants of the python's mana. These spirit-type creatures, born from the powerful residual energy, were notorious for their group tactics and light-based attacks. "These are level 35 monsters, stay sharp," she shouted, rallying the group. She directed Itzy to take the central position while instructing the tanks to engage the monsters directly. Glancing back, she reassured him, "Just focus on using your debuffs from behind our line." As the battle commenced, the tankers took their positions, absorbing the brunt of the lizardlings' assaults. Gosrin and Itzy coordinated their attacks, slicing through the monsters with practiced ease. Meanwhile, one of the male tankers, exuding confidence, dismissed the need for extra protection. "A few hits here and there won't make a difference," he boasted, swinging his sword with gusto. "Just tank and attack, that's all we need to do." In the midst of battle, one of the tankers glanced over at him dismissively and remarked, "Why did we even bring that puny debuffer? There's no need to debuff these little scrubs." Just as he boasted that he could handle all the tanking himself and urged the group to quickly finish up and move on to something stronger, he was caught off guard. Unbeknownst to him, a target mark had appeared above him, and suddenly, multiple bolts of lightning struck him down. He gasped for air momentarily before succumbing to the unexpected attack. The female tanker was startled to see a surge of lizardlings now swarming around them. She exclaimed in surprise, "Were there this many before?" She observed that their numbers had increased rapidly. Itzy, from the rear, confirmed her fears, shouting that they were surrounded. Gosrin quickly realized her oversight in the heat of the battle. She hastily took out 3 escape scrolls from her inventory, but her face fell as she counted the party members. There were 4 of them. He noticed her predicament and immediately told her to keep the scrolls. "Escape scrolls are pretty expensive these days," he reasoned. "Don't waste them on me, and you shouldn't sacrifice yourself either." Confused, she began to say that if she didn't use one, they might all perish, but he cut her off. He confidently pulled his hand out of his pocket and snapped his fingers, saying, "It's not even dangerous right now." To everyone's surprise, he then applied a weakening curse and desperate defense on the monster. With the monsters now debuffed, he assured the group, "Now that the debuffs are applied, let's go in for the kill." The team then engaged the lizardlings more confidently. The female tanker took charge of shielding everyone, while Itzy, energized by the turn of events, charged into the fray, easily slashing through the lizardlings. Itzy was amazed at how weak the monsters had become, realizing that just a few normal attacks were now sufficient to defeat them. He clapped his hands to gather everyone's attention and reminded them, "I know they seem weaker now, but their attack power is still the same. If we let our guard down, we'll end up like the tank who just died." Itzy agreed, acknowledging the importance of staying alert. Satisfied with his role and the effectiveness of his debuffs, he began to consider the possibility of focusing on becoming a dedicated debuffer. Just then, Gosrin's urgent voice called out to him to be careful. Swiftly, she moved to block an attack aimed at his back. "Are you okay?" she asked, concerned. He nodded, relieved by her timely intervention, and thanked her. "Yes, I'm fine, thanks to you." This experience not only demonstrated the value of his debuffing skills but also solidified the team's dynamics, with each member playing a crucial role in their collective survival. He couldn't help but notice Gosrin's remarkable agility during the fight. He mused that if she had chosen to be a rogue or archer, her level might have been even higher. It seemed a pity that she opted for the mage class instead. After the battle, as they all celebrated their level up, they joked about how easily they had gained experience. "People might think we use cheats if they saw this," they laughed. He asked the group if they had enjoyed the hunt. Initially, they seemed indifferent towards him, but now everyone appeared genuinely pleased. Itzy approached him, curious about his subdued tone. "Why do you sound so down?" he asked, adding, "I believed in you right till the end." The female tanker chimed in, her voice filled with genuine admiration. "Your debuffs were incredible. They're a game changer, literally a whole new world." Itzy then turned to her, half-jokingly scolding, "How can you even compare T-Sung to those other scrubs?" That made him reflect on the underappreciation buffers often faced, and why they seemed to get the short end of the stick. The conversation took another turn when one of the women expressed her surprise. "I've never seen a class that specializes just in debuffs. Are you sure it isn't a hidden class?" He was momentarily taken aback by her question, and awkwardly denied, No hidden classes here. If that were the case, I'd probably be part of a major guild by now." Itzy, curious, asked about his class. He explained that it was indeed unique but solely focused on debuffs. Itzy nodded, showing his understanding before asking if it was a new class. He knew classes were categorized into 4 grades: normal, legendary, mythic, and unique. Since his second job change, he found it hard to distinguish between the grades, prompting him to consider if he might be overusing his skills. Gosrin then hurried over, presenting him with a light crystal, a low-grade artifact formed from the residual energy of the lightning python. "We all collected these during the hunt to give to you," she explained. "We wanted to thank you because the hunt went so smoothly thanks to your debuffs." He was taken aback by their generosity. "Isn't this too much?" he asked, to which she replied that it was customary to give crystals to the buffers after a hunt, and they felt he deserved them this time. Gratefully accepting the crystal, he felt a sense of belonging and appreciation. Gosrin then held his hand, looking at him earnestly. "Will you keep hunting with us? I hope you'll continue to help us out," she asked hopefully. With a sigh, he responded, "Finding a good party is hard work, so yes, I'll stay." Her excitement was contagious as she turned to share the good news with the others. Watching their joy, he smiled, reflecting that perhaps leading a simple, ordinary life like this wasn't so bad after all. But Hamji, ever the tease, leaned in and whispered, "You're just staying because of her, aren't you?" prompting T-Sung to playfully tell him to shut up. As the week since joining the party passed, he found himself more integrated and valued than ever before in the virtual world. At the Adventurers' Rest Inn overlooking the ruins of Sohoka, the group mulled over whether to call it a day. Gosrin, always the voice of reason, suggested they had done enough for today and proposed they regroup and head out again tomorrow. He held the door for the departing members, reflecting on his recent adventures. Unlike the dramatic escapades in the Beerman territory, his current days consisted of steady leveling and the occasional unlocking of new auxiliary skills, a modest but satisfying progress. Hamji, always curious, nudged him. "Are you going to use those new skills you picked up today?" T-Sung, not one to let newly acquired abilities sit idle, affirmed with a nod. "Absolutely, can't let them go to waste," he declared. He then suggested they start by examining the crystal fragments they had collected during the day's hunt. Activating his attribute absorption skill, T-Sung watched as the system updated his stats. From the lowest grade light crystal, he absorbed 0.36 units of light attribute energy, incrementally boosting his resistance to that element. Since reaching level 35, this new support skill had become a key part of his strategy, allowing him to absorb specific energies to enhance his resistance and, potentially, other abilities. The skill seemed straightforward, a mere boost in resistance. But he sensed deeper potential. The real challenge lay in not knowing the exact amount of energy needed to enhance his other skills, making each absorption a step in a mysterious journey towards a breakthrough. Despite the allure of party hunting, Tae-sung decided it was time to focus on solo leveling to unlock another new skill he anticipated would come with his next level up, likely tomorrow. But when Gosrin approached, her invitation to join her for another hunt was met with an instinctual yes from him, his strategy momentarily forgotten. That evening, as he lay on his sofa, he couldn't help but feel a bit defeated by his own impulsiveness, vowing to himself to level up the following day. The next morning, as he emerged from his room, stretching and yawning, he was surprised by the unusual silence. Expecting to see his friends gathered, he instead found himself facing a large crowd of adventurers at the inn. Confused, he turned to Hamji for an explanation, but even Hamji was at a loss. Suddenly, someone recognized him. "It's the Debuff Master," the call went out, and instantly, the crowd surged towards him, eager voices clamoring to recruit him to their parties, debating who had approached him first. Overwhelmed and slightly alarmed by the fervor, Tae-sung wondered what had gotten into everyone. Just then, amidst the chaos, a firm grip seized his wrist. It was Gosrin, pulling him away with urgency. "Hold on tight," she instructed, as she activated 2 scrolls in her other hand. Moments later, the system notified them of the activation of a return scroll, and they vanished from the inn, reappearing in a location that was strangely familiar. As they steadied themselves, Gosrin expressed her discomfort with teleportation, despite the necessity. "Are we back where we first went hunting together?" Tae-sung asked, recognizing the surroundings. She nodded, her expression mixed with relief and a hint of amusement. "I didn't plan to come back here today, but it seemed like the best escape route," she explained. He then demanded to know what was happening. In response, Gosrin pulled up a system message on her device, handing it to him. "I think you need to see this first," she said, hinting that something significant was unfolding. As he absorbed the information on the screen, Tae-sung was taken aback by the news headlines and the accompanying videos. They showed clips of their last hunt, emphasizing how the monsters simply disintegrated under the effect of his debuffs. The captions boldly stated that having one debuffer in a party could double the effectiveness of any hunting group compared to having 2 buffers. It was a surprise to see himself featured so prominently. Gosrin, looking equally surprised, explained that the video of their party in action had gone viral within the gaming community. She speculated on who might have recorded and shared it, but before she could finish, Tae-sung cut in. "It was Itzy, wasn't it?" His tone was certain, tinged with a hint of betrayal. Gosrin nodded in agreement, confirming that Itzy had left their group and likely uploaded the footage as he departed for another quest. She voiced her confusion over Itzy's motives, wondering why he would do such a thing. The situation reminded Tae-sung painfully of his past with Jinwoo, who had once been a close friend before turning against him. The memory stung, causing him to react with a mixture of anger and hurt. Gosrin quickly apologized for the unexpected drama, regretting having pushed him to join their group. Tae-sung reassured her, placing the blame squarely on Itzy. "It's not your fault," he told her, expressing his appreciation for her actions today. Gosrin, concerned about the fallout from the video, asked what his next move would be. Contemplating the growing rumors and his own discomfort with the sudden fame, Tae-sung decided it was best to level up once more and then seek a new path, away from the current attention. Gosrin looked troubled by his decision, biting her lip in hesitation before suddenly asking if he would consider forming a new party, just the 2 of them. As they walked through the now eerily quiet area of their first hunt, Gosrin remarked on the absence of monsters, half joking that maybe his debuffs had cleared the area permanently. His laughter in response was awkward. Forming a duo with Gosrin wasn't something he had anticipated, especially given her earlier irritation. Caught in his thoughts, he was snapped back to reality by Hamji's teasing question. "Do you agree with me?" Confused, Tae-sung asked what he meant. Hamji hinted at a special vibe, a connection between him and Gosrin. Trying to catch Hamji for more clarity, Taesung missed as Hamji danced away, laughing and commenting on Taesung's obliviousness to romantic cues. Hamji, still in high spirits, hinted that he was excited about potentially unlocking his first skills soon. This news prompted Taesung to remind him that if his own level was increasing, Hamji's would too, possibly allowing him to access new skills. Just then, Gosrin reappeared, overhearing their conversation about skills. She inquired if it might be a pet skill, an idea that startled Taesung. Gosrin explained that such skills were rare and typically associated with high-tier pets, expressing her amazement at the possibility. Hamji responded to Gosrin's comment with a mix of pride and annoyance, clarifying his unique status. "I'm not just any pet. I am a great spirit of the forest who made an equal contract with my master," he declared, which seemed to confuse Gosrin. She quickly apologized, explaining that she assumed he was just a pet since he referred to Taesung as master. Hamji, slightly flustered, explained that such titles were merely formalities necessary for their business-like relationship. Meanwhile, Taesung observed Gosrin chatting with Hamji, smiling as she asked if she could call him by his name too. Curious about Gosrin's kindness towards him, he ventured to ask if it was all because of his debuffing skills. She chuckled, admitting that his looks were also a factor, which caught him off guard. He asked her to repeat herself, shocked by her playful admission. With a laugh, she teased him about whether he enjoyed teasing others. He responded shyly, admitting that he might be more mischievous than he realized, while Hamji watched the exchange with amusement. Gosrin then shared that while his debuffing initially drew her to him, she had developed other reasons to stay close. Intrigued, Taesung asked what those reasons were. "I've become genuinely interested in you, not just as the debuff master, but as the gamer Taesung," she confessed. He downplayed himself, suggesting he wasn't particularly remarkable, but Gosrin disagreed, pointing out his careful attention to the team's needs during gameplay, something she hadn't often seen from other players. She explained that his detailed care for each team member's position, equipment, and potions was impressive and indicative of his leadership qualities. Surprised, Taesung realized these were habits from his days as a guild leader. Gosrin expressed her curiosity about his real-life persona, leading Taesung to start revealing more about himself. However, before he could continue, the ground beneath them suddenly gave way. As the earth collapsed, Taesung found himself in a stunned state, with Gosrin reaching out to him. The system timer indicated he would recover in 5 seconds. When the time elapsed, he gasped back to awareness, sitting up to survey the chaotic scene around him. He turned to find Gosrin and Hamji approaching him. Hamji playfully chided him, calling him Weakling Master, a nickname that caught him by surprise. Noticing Gosrin's injured shoulder, he expressed his concern, but she downplayed the injury, explaining it was nothing serious. Hamji elaborated that Gosrin had protected Taesung from falling debris during his fall, acting as his shield. Feeling a mix of gratitude and guilt, Taesung apologized for being a burden. Gosrin quickly reassured him, insisting it was not a big deal and that what mattered was they were all safe now. As they moved cautiously through the dimly lit underground corridors, Gosrin reassured Taesung that she had already taken a healing potion and was on the mend. Her tone then shifted to serious as she gestured towards an ominous opening ahead of them. "Did you see that?" she asked, and before he could respond, they found themselves at the entrance to what appeared to be Osric cult's laboratory hidden beneath the Sohokur ruins. Taesung admitted he had never heard of the Osric cult, and Gosrin echoed his sentiment, her voice tinged with uncertainty. The scene inside was grim, countless corpses of soldiers and lizardlings strewn across the floor, hinting at a violent battle. Gosrin speculated that the horde of lizardlings they had encountered earlier might have originated from this very place, though she confessed she'd never known about any dungeon here in the Sohokur ruins. Pondering aloud, Taesung suggested it might be a hidden dungeon, similar to the lairs of legendary creatures like Garugo the Goblin Lord, known for their rare rewards and perilous challenges. Gosrin caught the gleam of excitement in his eyes but voiced her concern about their capability to tackle such a formidable challenge alone. As they deliberated, Taesung suddenly pointed downwards, his attention drawn by a figure stumbling out of the shadows and collapsing nearby. Without hesitation, they rushed to the man's aid, helping him regain some strength. Gratefully, the man explained he was part of the Guardians, a secret society investigating the malevolent Osric cult in the ruins. He revealed that his team had been overwhelmed by the cult's strength, forcing him to escape alone. With urgency in his voice, the man implored them to help thwart the cult's sinister plans. He described the crucial task of destroying 5 orbs located in the cult's research lab to prevent a catastrophe. As he spoke, a group of men charged towards them, members of the Osric cult, determined to stop them. Tae-sun quickly grabbed his mace, readying himself for the confrontation. Gosrin protested, concerned that his debuff skills alone might not suffice. But Tae-sun, feeling responsible for her earlier injury, insisted on taking the lead. He made her promise not to record or share any information about their actions, emphasizing the need for secrecy. As the cult members closed in, Tae-sun swung his mace with surprising agility and power, taking down 3 attackers with swift precision. The ease of his defense surprised both Gosrin and the rescued man. Standing tall, he reassured Gosrin, "I'll clear this dungeon," his voice filled with a newfound determination. The system then updated his quest log, showing the hidden mission: thwart the conspiracy of the Osric cult. His task was clear: destroy the energy orbs within the research lab and put an end to the cult's dangerous experiments. As they stood in the dimly lit corridor, the system flashed a stern warning. They had limited time to destroy the energy orbs to prevent disaster. Just as Tae-sun pondered their next move, the tension broke with the sound of a cult member crashing against the wall. The dazed man, struggling to regain his bearings, demanded to know if Tae-sun and Gosrin were guardians or mere adventurers. Tae-sun's response was curt. "You don't need to know," he said, pressing for the location of the lab. He positioned himself menacingly in front of the cultist, offering clemency in exchange for information. Yet, the man's loyalty to the Osric cult was unyielding. He laughed off the threat, proclaiming his readiness to die rather than betray his cause. He accused them of foolishly underestimating the cult's resolve. Tae-sun, recognizing the cultist's unshakable faith, stood up, dismissing the idea of extracting information through torture. "Why resort to cruelty when I just need a good fight to shake off the rust?" he joked darkly, brandishing his mace with a sinister grin. The cultist's resolve faltered, and he quickly divulged that the path to the lab split ahead. Straight and then a right would lead them directly there. Frustrated yet victorious, Tae-sun knocked the cultist unconscious with a swift blow to the head, then signaled to Gosrin that it was time to move. As they approached the lab's entrance, Gosrin seemed about to question Tae-sun's aggressive tactics, but he cut her off, promising to explain everything once the quest was completed. She hesitated, then reluctantly agreed, extracting a promise from him to share the full story later. Inside the lab, they were greeted by a grim tableau. Various creatures floated in containment tubes, and the bodies of defeated cult members were strewn about the floor. Other cultists hurriedly cleaned up the aftermath. At the center of the lab, the High Priest Romulus was visibly frustrated as he discarded a useless formula. He raged about the interference from the Guardians, just as one proclaimed their dedication to thwarting the cult's vile schemes. Before the Guardian could finish his declaration, Romulus swiftly silenced him with a brutal strike, his sword slashing through the air and cutting the man's throat. With cold efficiency, Romulus ordered his followers to continue their cleanup, then turned to inquire about the fate of another escaped Guardian. A bald cultist reported that their evangelists were in pursuit, doubting the injured man could have escaped far. Romulus's laughter echoed through the lab, a chilling sound that belied the gravity of their sinister activities. He mocked the Guardians' efforts as futile, confident in the cult's impending victory. As Romulus gloated over the impending resurrection of the demon god, declaring that it would herald a new era for their cult, the atmosphere was abruptly shattered by a burst of flame that engulfed their vital machinery. The machine exploded into fragments under the impact of the fiery magic, sending Romulus into a state of shock and then outrage as he witnessed his plans crumbling before his eyes. Tae-sun watched from a distance, a slight smirk playing on his lips as he complimented Gosrin on her nice shot. Romulus, infuriated and desperate to understand the collapse of his operation, demanded to know their identities, questioning if they were Guardians. Tisung, tired of the constant interrogation, quipped that he was merely a saboteur, not bound to any formal group. Romulus, refusing to accept defeat, ordered his remaining followers to hasten the resurrection ritual by boosting the output of their remaining machines. The cultists scrambled to redirect the magical energy, initiating a frantic surge toward the main apparatus. The system alerted Tisung that the resurrection ritual had commenced, displaying a countdown of 5 minutes for him to destroy the remaining 4 orbs to prevent the catastrophe. Realizing the gravity of their mission, Gosrin panicked at the realization that they were now racing against time in a critical attack quest. Tisung reassured her, urging her to focus on the orbs while he dealt with the cultists. Confident in his abilities despite the limited number of foes remaining, he assured her that he could manage the situation, even with Romulus potentially complicating their efforts. Tisung advanced toward the throng of cultists as Romulus barked orders to subdue the insolent heretic. Cult members converged on Tisung from both sides. With swift reflexes, he blocked an incoming blow and countered with a fierce elbow strike, followed by a powerful swing of his mace that sent another attacker reeling. Just as he dealt with one, another cultist attempted a sneak attack from behind, which Tisung blocked effortlessly. In the midst of the melee, a surge of green energy blasted towards him. Reacting quickly, Tisung used one of the cultists as a shield, resulting in an explosion that incapacitated the man. Romulus criticized Tisung's tactic, mocking his use of a human shield. Tisung retorted, acknowledging Romulus's resilience and strategic acumen, but pointed out that the cult leader was now left without any effective support. Romulus, unfazed and with a sly grin, hinted that Tisung had never seen him truly alone. As those words hung in the air, Tisung felt a sinister presence attempting to ensnare him from behind. Swiftly swinging his mace, he discovered it was not a man but a spirit summoned to aid Romulus. As Tisung grappled with the eerie forms attacking him, he realized these were no mere ghosts, but spirits summoned from the bodies of the fallen, controlled by Romulus. The High Priest proudly declared himself the Dark Priest of the great Osric cult, his powers fueled by the spirits of the deceased. This chilling revelation underscored that as long as corpses surrounded him, Romulus would remain a formidable foe. Surrounded by a swirl of vengeful spirits, Romulus taunted Tisung, proclaiming that he, too, would soon become a part of his dark arsenal. Observing Romulus's stats, Tisung noted he was a level 55 named entity with a special ability called Shadow of the Dead. The spirits lunged at Tisung, who dodged with swift agility. Despite his efforts, the spirits phased through him repeatedly, each pass sapping his health, hinting at a sinister, summoned debuff. Physical attacks proved futile against the spectral onslaught. With the clock ticking down, only 3 minutes and 12 seconds remaining, Tisung understood the urgency of ending the battle swiftly. He suspected Romulus of deliberately prolonging the confrontation to exhaust him. Romulus, reveling in his control over the spirits, mocked Tisung's efforts. Undeterred, Tisung surged forward, activating his smash skill. He aimed a direct hit at Romulus, who managed to block with his sword but was knocked back by the powerful blow. Tisung taunted him back, questioning whether Romulus would next block with his face. To which Romulus, his sword now shattered, furiously rallied his spirits for another attack. As the spirits enveloped Tisung in a suffocating tornado, Romulus sneered, confident in his impending victory and the successful resurrection of the demon god. It was at this critical moment that the system notified Tisung of his advancement to level 45, unlocking a new skill called Flying Spur. Without hesitation, Tisung activated the skill, hurling a weapon straight through the swirling mass of spirits, causing them to dissipate. Romulus, caught off guard, questioned the nature of this unexpected attack. Divine punishment, Tisung retorted, as he controlled the spur to strike Romulus directly in the stomach. The impact slammed Romulus against a machine, fatally wounding him as the mace pierced through his body. As Romulus fell, Tisung pulled back his mace, relieved yet introspective, musing that mastering the spur had been simpler than anticipated and regretting not utilizing it earlier. Now, with the main threat neutralized, he turned his focus to the remaining task, the destruction of the orbs to prevent the resurrection of the demon god. Meanwhile, Gosrin was fervently attacking the orbs with bursts of fire magic. Only 2 orbs remained intact. She encouraged herself to persist just a bit longer, focusing all her energy on shattering the last barriers to their mission's success. As Gosrin struggled against the countdown to destroy the orbs, her situation grew dire when the bald cultist reappeared, grabbing her injured shoulder with a painful grip. With only a minute and 20 seconds left on the clock, the pressure mounted. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a mace whizzed past, shattering one of the orbs. The cultist reeled in shock, only to be met with a swift punch that sent him sprawling to the ground. Tisung joined Gosrin, concern evident on his face. He noticed her discomfort and asked about her shoulder, which seemed to hinder her aim. Gosrin, feeling responsible for the delays, apologized, but Tisung quickly reassured her. He explained that his special skill was on cooldown, making it impossible for him to destroy the final orb with a normal attack. They needed her magic to finish the job. Gosrin hesitated, weighed down by the pressure, but Tisung encouraged her. Whether we succeed or not, time won't wait. What should we do? Gathering her resolve, Gosrin agreed to try. With only 15 seconds remaining, she concentrated her fire magic, her aim unsteady. At 10 seconds, Tisung supported her, steadying her hand as the final moments ticked down. At 4 seconds, she managed a confident smile, and with 3 seconds left, she unleashed a powerful blast of fire magic toward the last orb. In a dramatic twist, Romulus, whom they believed to be dead, suddenly appeared, throwing himself in front of the orb to shield it from Gosrin's attack. His unexpected intervention blocked the magic, and as he collapsed, he declared his intent to bring disaster upon the world. The system then announced their failure to stop the ritual in time, and the impending awakening of the boss monster. A blinding light erupted from the huge mirror behind the last orb, signaling the revival of the boss monster. Tisung shielded his eyes, cursing Romulus for his stubborn persistence and berating himself for not ensuring the cult leader's defeat. As the dust settled, Tisung's gaze fell on the form of the newly awakened beast, a massive snake. The system identified their new challenge: the lightning python, part of a hidden quest named Disaster Eradication. Their mission was now to defeat this colossal creature. Despite its fearsome appearance, Tisung noted that the snake was smaller than the legendary descriptions he remembered. Ancient tales depicted the lightning python as a gargantuan serpent that could encircle a large mountain with length to spare. Facing the formidable lightning python, Tisung and Gosrin assessed the challenge before them. The serpent, though only 20 meters long, was a resurrected monster from another world, a creature that had once laid the prosperous city of Sohoka to ruin in a single night. The system classified it as a level 70 boss with the designation Lightning Buster, and its most dangerous ability was Charged Breath, a powerful energy-infused attack. Gosrin, eyeing the creature, speculated that the failed resurrection due to the destroyed orbs had left the python less potent than it might have been. However, she was adamant that, given its formidable level, they should consider retreating. Tisung, captivated by the rarity and challenge of the beast, confessed that he couldn't walk away from such a unique battle. He urged Gosrin to flee, but instead, she handed him a potion designed to bolster resistance against elemental attacks. Though only a low-level potion, it was better than no protection at all. Confused by her determination, Tisung started to protest, but Gosrin was resolute. "We've come too far to back down now," she declared, insisting they fight together to the end. Tisung, moved by her bravery, agreed, though he made it clear he wouldn't hold himself responsible should they fall in battle. As the python launched its initial attack, they skillfully dodged. The beast's agility was startling for its size, demanding constant vigilance. It lunged at Tisung, who narrowly evaded its snapping jaws and countered by leaping above the beast. Ready to test the python's resilience, Tisung activated his desperate defense skill to weaken its defenses, followed by a powerful smash skill, aiming for a critical hit. The python reacted swiftly, raising its tail in a deadly counterstrike. Tisung dodged just in time, avoiding a crushing death. But the battle was far from over. The python prepared to unleash its charged breath. Just then, Gosrin intervened, striking its head with a burst of her fire magic. The force of her attack caused the python's aim to skew, the deadly energy blast missing Tisung by mere inches. As the python regrouped for another assault, its breath attacks raining down, Tisung and Gosrin managed to escape its immediate wrath. Exhausted and shaken, Tisung collapsed momentarily, assuring Gosrin he was okay despite the close call. Her concern was palpable, and in a lighter moment amidst the chaos, he playfully asked her to ignore his earlier scream of pain. Surveying the destruction around them, Tisung realized the gravity of their situation. Even in its weakened state, the lightning python was a formidable opponent, its attacks capable of catastrophic destruction. Gosrin echoed his urgency, warning that if the python launched another similar attack, they might not only fail their mission but also risk the entire lab's collapse. Determined and with a clear understanding of the stakes, they prepared for a final stand. Gosrin, standing resolutely by Tisung's side, suggested they finish the battle swiftly, before the beast could gather more strength and potentially bring down the entire structure upon them. Tisung analyzed the predicament as the lightning python wrapped itself in a charged barrier, boosting its magic resistance by a staggering 200%. The system's alerts were stark. Any approach towards the charged barrier would lead to electrocution and paralysis. Observing the python intensifying its mana into the charged breath while strengthening the barrier, Tisung sighed, recognizing the frustratingly relentless pattern of attack. Gosrin, feeling the urgency, questioned their strategy. With such high magic resistance and the risk of paralysis from close contact, how can we possibly attack? She asked, visibly concerned. Tisung reassured her. It's not as hopeless as it seems. His confidence unshaken. He knew this was the perfect moment to leverage his debuff skills. With a confident snap, he activated his weakening curse, specifically designed to drain health and mana. The curse manifested directly beneath the python, causing it to reel from the sudden assault. As the charged barrier shattered from the curse's impact, the system confirmed that the python had entered a frenzy state, dropping the barrier. Gosrin was amazed to see the barrier break. Tisung explained, no matter how high its resistance, the fixed damage from the curse still gets through. He noted with satisfaction that the forced dispersal of the charged barrier meant the python could no longer properly manage its mana, likely causing a significant drop in health. Without wasting another moment, Tisung charged at the beast. As the python prepared another attack, launching balls of lightning, Tisung dodged them with agile movements. He leaped and delivered a powerful blow with his smash skill directly onto the python's body. Reacting swiftly, the python countered with a tail attack, but Tisung used his speed regulation skill to evade and maneuver around the creature. Did you think I'd fall for the same move twice? He taunted, then launched an attack at its head, branding it a stubborn opponent. Despite the python's attempts to minimize the damage, Tisung's scorn of the strong skill boosted his counterattack, allowing him to inflict a critical hit that fractured the python's body. He grinned as he read the notification that the fourth quest, the Osric cult's conspiracy, was completed. As he landed, he saw the python split in half, its body torn by his final strike. The system prompted him to collect his rewards from the creature's remains. He had advanced to level 46, feeling a slight disappointment for only gaining one level, contemplating the long journey to level 200. Thought I'd get at least 2 levels, he mused. Somewhat let down by the experience points, though satisfied with the decent rewards. Gosrin approached, her expression a mix of disbelief and admiration. I can't believe you actually killed it, she exclaimed. Tisung modestly replied that it was all thanks to her support, although she knew deep down that he might have managed even without her help. Meanwhile, Tisung wondered about the delay in receiving the rewards. Gosrin reflected on the battle, knowing that normally it would take 5 high-level players over level 70 to take down a lightning python, yet Tisung, barely at level 45, had managed to defeat it solo. Tisung called out to Gosrin, snapping her back to the present moment. She apologized for drifting off, her mind momentarily elsewhere. Curious, she suggested they should quickly check what rewards they had garnered from their hard-won battle. Tisung, however, paused, hinting at another concern before they could dive into the spoils of their victory. Gosrin raised an eyebrow, wondering aloud if he was still keeping secrets. Instead, Tisung asked, somewhat sheepishly, if she had any rubber gloves. A request that left her baffled. He explained his peculiar need. Dismantling the massive corpse of the lightning python seemed necessary to extract their rewards, a task that was as grim as it was essential. "It looks like we'll have to physically break it down to get anything useful," he muttered, voicing his frustration about the game mechanics. Gosrin nodded in agreement, recognizing the practical challenges that large bosses presented. Soon, they managed to collect the python's scales, blood, flesh, bones, and fang. As they sorted through the substantial haul, Gosrin commented on the volume and quality of the materials, acknowledging that despite the effort, large bosses indeed yielded worthwhile rewards. Tisung, however, appeared less than thrilled, lamenting the nature of their loot. After all the excitement and danger of a hidden dungeon boss, the tangible rewards felt underwhelming. As he sifted through the items, his attention was drawn to the python's core, a dense orb of energy that was the essence of the python's power, rich with light attribute energy. It was a singular, consumable item, a prize beyond measure in their current context. Tisung hesitated, torn between his significant contribution to their victory and the fairness of reward distribution. He walked over to Gosrin, admitting his dilemma awkwardly. "I know I played a major part in this, but it doesn't feel right to keep everything for myself," he confessed, deciding to claim just the python's core while offering the rest to her. The silence that followed was broken by Gosrin's laughter, a reaction that puzzled Tisung even more. "Why are you laughing?" he asked, finding her amusement slightly unsettling. Gosrin's smile was warm as she explained her perspective. She reminded him of their earlier hunts, how she used to gather experience points and bring back rewards for both of them. "Think of this as the same thing," she suggested. "I feel fully rewarded just by completing this quest with you. It's the most memorable adventure I've ever had." Tisung was taken aback by her words, realizing the depth of their partnership. If she insisted, he felt there was little he could do but accept her generosity. "If that's how you see it," he conceded, "then I suppose it's okay." He admitted that carrying all the rewards would overload his inventory anyway, and sharing them seemed like a practical solution after all. Hamji's sudden appearance broke the tension as Tisung and Gosrin were sorting through their hard-won loot. "Is it safe to come out now?" Hamji joked, half expecting some leftovers to scavenge. Tisung playfully scolded him for hiding during the messy business of dissecting the python, to which Hamji quipped about the mysterious marvels of his own existence. In a dramatic flair, Hamji clasped his hands together, pulling apart the air above him to reveal what seemed like fabric morphing into an object. "Check this out," he announced with a flourish, showcasing his new skill, the infinite bag. Tisung, intrigued, grabbed the item, initially mistaking it for a simple old-fashioned wrapping cloth. But upon closer inspection, he was stunned to see an expansive galaxy-like void within Hamji's bag. The system chimed in, identifying the item as "Pick It Up," an infinite bag, a magical artifact from the spirit world capable of endless storage. It embodied the void of a world of nothingness, making it an invaluable asset for any adventurer burdened by the typical constraints of inventory space. Realizing the potential of such a tool, Tisung couldn't help but express his excitement about Hamji's newfound utility. "You're finally pulling your weight around here," he exclaimed, half jokingly. As they were about to celebrate Hamji's new ability with some snacks, another presence interrupted them. The Guardian Man they had encountered before approached, startling them with his unexpected arrival. Tisung, always on guard, swung around with his mace raised, only to find the man laughing off the hostility. "Don't be alarmed, I'm not an enemy," the Guardian reassured them, his demeanor lightening. He explained his dramatic entrance, which now felt somewhat silly to him. Transforming back to his original appearance, he greeted them warmly, grateful to see them safe. As the man's features shifted, Tisung squinted, trying to place the familiar face. "Aren't you Han Tisung?" he questioned, stepping closer with suspicion. The situation seemed surreal as he pointed his mace slightly closer to the man's face, demanding clarity on his true identity. The man, now identified as Chen Wujin, encouraged Tisung to use the rune of insight for verification. Tisung, still on edge, demanded Wujin reveal his identity and explain how he knew his name. But Wojin playfully countered, questioning if Tai-sung was the type to act before thinking, while reaching for T-sung's mace. Wojin then explained that even with the Rune of Insight, there was no way for T-sung to check his information, as he released a strong aura that pushed T-sung away. T-sung realized he had momentarily forgotten that if the level difference was too overwhelming, higher-level players could hide their information. Wojin asked if he should have lowered his power a bit more, acknowledging the disparity between them. T-sung, frustrated, asked why someone as powerful as Wojin would approach him in disguise and whether his intentions were merely to flaunt his strength to a relatively low-level player. Wojin laughed, apologizing for the confusion he caused, admitting he had acted impulsively. He then casually mentioned that he was just genuinely interested in T-sung, labeling him not just any player, but Dice's only disciple, which shocked T-sung deeply. Stunned, T-sung demanded to know how Wojin was privy to such private information. Wojin laughed it off, assuring T-sung that he was the only one who knew and that if T-sung wanted more details, he should come to Sinsadong, where Wojin would contact him later. Wojin then turned to Gosrin, who had been silently observing, and apologized for the disruption, suggesting they enjoy the rest of their day. As Wojin departed, T-sung was left reeling from the revelation. He questioned whether other high-level players or groups like Genesis might also know his identity, worried about the ramifications. However, Gosrin, seeing his distress, assured him she hadn't recorded their conversation nor was she interested in his secrets. Hamji, sensing the tension, promised to protect T-sung, easing some of his fears. T-sung thanked both for their support, feeling slightly more secure but still troubled by the potential exposure. After exiting the hidden dungeon, Gosrin decided to stay behind in the ruins to level up, while T-sung took a break from logging into Brave New World, unsettled by the day's events and the fear that his secret might be more widely known than he had thought. Lying on his bed, the weight of recent events pressing down on him, T-sung felt a cloud of uncertainty hovering over his head. In an attempt to escape his worries, he decided to shut his eyes and drift into sleep, hoping for some respite. 3 days later, T-sung logged back into the game to find an email waiting for him from Chen Wujin. The message was cryptic but clear. "Meet me at midnight tonight at Club Heaven in Sinsadong." T-sung felt a mix of anticipation and apprehension. Wujin was no ordinary character, and choosing such a bustling public place for their meeting added layers of intrigue and discomfort. As the hours ticked by, T-sung ventured into the neon-lit streets of Gangnam's Sinsadong. It had been ages since he wandered any city at night. Gaming had always been his nightlife. He arrived at Club Heaven, his first ever visit to a nightclub. He paused at the entrance, half expecting to be turned away. True to his fears, the club's guard halted him for a dress code violation. T-sung was woefully underdressed in his casual sweatpants. He tried to explain he was there for a quick meeting, not to party, but the guard's stern look shut him down. Behind him, a couple mocked his attire, adding to his embarrassment. The situation escalated when a man dismissed him as a bum, urging him to leave. Just then, a familiar hand clutched T-sung's shoulder. It was Chen Wujin, his presence immediately changing the air around them. "You should have dressed up a little," Wujin chided lightly. The guard, realizing whom T-sung was with, quickly apologized and bowed, acknowledging his mistake. Wujin laughed off the misunderstanding, quipping that he, too, might have wanted to kick T-sung out based on his outfit. They entered the club together, leaving behind the stunned couple who now realized the gravity of their mistake. Inside Club Heaven, the atmosphere was electric with pulsing lights and thumping music. Wujin guided T-sung to a VIP room, away from the crowded dance floor. Once settled, Wujin offered him a choice of drinks, suggesting Dom Perignon or Arment, though T-sung admitted he had no clue what those were. "I'm not here to drink," T-sung said firmly, indicating he had more pressing matters to discuss. Wujin, ever the host, suggested that if T-sung felt inclined, he could join the dance floor instead. Tai-sung, his frustration boiling over, couldn't help but raise his voice. "Are you trying to provoke me on purpose?" he demanded, reminding Wujin that it was he who had summoned him here tonight. Wujin, with a laugh and a casual pour of wine, seemed amused by T-sung's fiery temper. Your reactions are just too entertaining. Wu Jin chuckled, which only intensified T-Sung's impatience. Enough games, T-Sung snapped. Just tell me who you really are. Wu Jin's demeanor shifted to a more serious tone as he acknowledged his previous intrusions, including the disruption of T-Sung's last outing. Let me explain a few things, Wu Jin began, his voice now somber. He revealed that the persona he had assumed during their last encounter, the Wounded Guardian, was based on a real member of the Guardians who had escaped from the Osric research lab and died shortly after. That man was a comrade of mine, Wu Jin confessed, admitting that using the identity of a deceased Guardian was a betrayal of their trust. T-Sung, taken aback, asked if Wu Jin was admitting to using the guise of a dead friend just to deceive him. Wu Jin nodded solemnly, expressing no excuses for his actions. It was a necessary deception, he insisted, though he was clearly troubled by the moral implications. And yes, it was worth it, to meet you, the sole disciple of Deos. As they delved deeper into the conversation, Wu Jin dropped another revelation, casually mentioning his own status. Like you, I am also of a hidden class, he said nonchalantly. T-Sung nearly choked on his wine, surprised not just by Wu Jin's confession but by the realization that another hidden class existed. Does this mean you knew about me because you're also hidden? T-Sung asked, seeking clarity. Wu Jin nodded, his expression serious. Exactly. And though hidden classes carry unique powers, they aren't omnipotent. He reassured T-Sung that his secret was safe. Only I know about your lineage as Deus's disciple. Not even those high and mighty Genesis folks are aware, he added, trying to ease T-Sung's worries. T-Sung, still on edge, wasn't fully convinced. And just what hidden class are you? He pressed, suspicion lacing his words. Wu Jin's response was frustratingly vague. I'm afraid that's something you're not yet ready to know. You need to grow stronger. Live up to your potential as Deus's disciple. The conversation left T-Sung more puzzled and agitated than reassured. Wu Jin's cryptic advice, to grow stronger before more could be revealed, felt like yet another challenge he had to face. The next day, logging back into the game, T-Sung found a semblance of normalcy waiting for him. Hamji, ever cheerful, greeted him with a snack in hand. As T-Sung checked in with Hamji, he couldn't help but worry about any potential trouble he might have inadvertently caused during his absence. Hamji, ever the light-hearted companion, assured him with a chuckle. I'm not the troublemaker here, that's all you, master. The conversation quickly shifted as Hamji inquired whether T-Sung had concluded his mysterious dealings in the other realm effectively. T-Sung sighed, reflecting on his ambiguous parting with Chen Wu Jin. It all just ended. No real conclusions. He mentioned meeting again when I hit level 200, he recounted, puzzled by Wu Jin's intentions and the cryptic condition for their next encounter. It didn't seem to T-Sung that Wu Jin's aim was solely to network with other hidden class players. Caught up in his thoughts, T-Sung barely noticed Hamji's observation of their surroundings. Why are we even here? Hamji prodded, hinting at the unsavory nature of their current location. This shady place doesn't seem like your style. His comment drew a smirk from T-Sung, who then playfully rebuked Hamji's insinuation about the nature of their visit. We're in Dandagiri, the city of pleasure within Brave New World, known for its bars, gambling dens, and other adult venues. But we're here for the underground market, not for fun. T-Sung clarified, determined to stay focused on his mission to sell the items they had acquired and upgrade his gear. As they walked through the bustling streets, T-Sung's attention was abruptly drawn to a group of men from the Genesis Guild. Their presence in such a place irked him, a reminder of the pervasive influence of the notorious guild. Prestigious guild bastards, he muttered under his breath, considering confronting them but ultimately deciding against it. Hamji, sensing his tension, teased him about feeling intimidated. T-Sung sharply responded, "It's not about fear. It's about avoiding filth." They continued past the Genesis group, T-Sung underlining his philosophy to Hamji. We'll step on them someday, just not today. Let's focus on selling these items quickly. Unbeknownst to them, one of the Genesis members was stirring trouble with a local old man, insisting on checking out the rumored valuable items the man supposedly possessed. The old man remained stoically silent, ignoring their provocations. A second Genesis member cautioned his comrade, suspecting the old man might be stronger than he appeared, noting that their rune of insight couldn't gauge his level accurately. The first member dismissed the caution with bravado typical of Genesis. "We're Genesis. Who would dare challenge us?" After witnessing the unnecessary harassment from the Genesis members, T-Sung's patience snapped. One of the brash men put his finger on the silent old man, taunting him for being too scared to speak. That was the last straw for T-Sung, who intervened with a swift punch that sent the man crashing into a nearby stack of crates. His voice boomed over the clamor. "Enough with your taunts about fear." The other Genesis member, now fumbling in panic, pulled a sword from his inventory. He stuttered, trying to invoke the fear associated with the Genesis guild name. "Don't you see our uniform? We're from Genesis." But T-Sung was unfazed and responded with another decisive punch, knocking the sense of entitlement right out of the aggressor. "This is exactly why I despise you guys," he muttered as both men lay defeated on the ground, their bravado shattered. Hamji, who had been observing the quick escalation, chuckled and commented, "Looks like you couldn't hold back after all." T-Sung shot back, frustrated. "If you hadn't been itching and distracting me, maybe I could have." Hamji, slightly sheepish but still amused, shrugged it off, suggesting the itch was unbearable. Turning to the old man, T-Sung reassured him, "Don't worry about those guys. They're all talk." But the old man remained silent, deepening T-Sung's concern about his inability to speak. As they walked away from the scene, Hamji curiously inquired about the Genesis Guild, wondering about the potential repercussions of the confrontation. T-Sung confidently assured him, "It wasn't a PvP worth recording. They won't dare make a fuss after the beating they got." He planned to quickly sell their items and perform some maintenance, feeling a sense of satisfaction at having put the Genesis members in their place without drawing too much attention. Later, at the Intervention Hotel's Dondagiri branch, T-Sung marveled at the exclusive training ground inside the hotel. The space, seemingly small from the outside, unfolded into a vast area perfect for adventurers' maintenance and training. Although the fee was steep, T-Sung acknowledged its value, encouraging Hamji to get started. Hamji, ever the dramatic one, jumped off T-Sung's shoulder and made a show of retrieving his infinite bag, causing a loud thud as he landed. T-Sung, slightly annoyed, questioned the need for such theatrics. Hamji, unfazed, quipped about not underestimating the importance of his dramatic moments. While sorting through their equipment, Hamji asked T-Sung why he had purchased weapons other than his main one-handed blunt. As T-Sung engaged in a grueling training session, testing each weapon at his disposal, he contemplated the importance of choosing the right main weapon for his impending level 50 milestone. The notifications kept reminding him of the decision looming ahead, adding pressure to his already intense session. Despite the variety available, spear, gauntlet, greatsword, and more, he found himself gravitating back to the familiar one-handed blunt weapon that had served him well thus far. Yet, a part of him knew he needed to explore all options to make an informed choice. He summoned his Shadow Boxer, a training device with fixed defense and infinite health, ideal for weapon testing. Starting with a shield, he experimented with a piercing attack that showcased decent destructive power but disappointing damage output, only 5,400 damage per second. Switching to a sword, he continued the rigorous testing, but as hours passed, even Hamji grew weary, yawning and questioning. "How much longer will you keep at this? It's been 2 hours already." Exhausted from the session and overwhelmed by the ambiguous results, each weapon had its merits and drawbacks. T-Sung felt none truly outshone the others. Resigned, he was about to default to his comfortable choice of the one-handed blunt weapon when an unexpected visitor disrupted his thoughts. The old man from earlier, whom T-Sung had encountered amidst the Genesis confrontation, appeared mysteriously in the private training facility. Surprised and slightly suspicious, T-Sung questioned how the old man gained access and whether he was another of Wu Jin's tricks, or perhaps a member of the Guardians. The old man ignored his inquiries, instead asking T-Sung why he had helped him earlier without seeking any reward. Confused by the old man's focus on his motives rather than his identity, T-Sung paused before responding. He admitted that helping the old man had reminded him of his own past experiences, times when he couldn't resist those stronger than himself. "I just didn't want to run from my past anymore," he confessed, a candid glimpse into his personal growth. The old man chuckled appreciatively at T-Sung's straightforward reason, then dramatically tossed aside his hat, introducing himself as Shikiro. He declared, "From now on, I will make you stronger." As he revealed his true identity, T-Sung was astounded to see that Shikiro was not just any NPC but a level 304 weapon master, one of the revered 5-star heavens. That's it for this part, guys, the next part coming soon. If you've watched to the end, then that may be an indication that you enjoy the video, so please drop a like so the video could reach more people. Take care.